The bankers wrote their letters in shadows cold and deep, a promise forged of iron chains to bind us in our sleep. They called it just a progress, a digital decree, but freedom has no barcode and souls are not for leave. It's the final countdown, the reckoning of men. Crypto, gold, and silver rise where paper dies again. They dream of central power, of money's iron cage, but voices rise unbroken to light this modern age. To Davos, the tyrants stake their claim. They preach of safety, justice, but hunger for the chain. They hide behind the slogans, they whisper trust the plan, but every law they're passing just enslaves the common man. It's the final countdown, the reckoning of men. Crypto, gold, and silver rise where paper dies again. They dream of central power, of money's iron cage, but voices rise unbroken to light this modern age. The merchants and the dreamers, the rebels and the wise, take refuge in the ledgers where the watchful state can pry. In Xano's cloak of shadows, in Monero's quiet streams, they guard the ancient promise of liberty's old dream. It's the final countdown, the reckoning of men. Crypto, gold, and silver rise where paper dies again. They dream of central power, of money's iron cage, but voices rise unbroken to light this modern age. So raise your hands in firelight, let tyrants hear the sound. The people's last defiance is the truth that won't back down. It's more than just survival, it's more than just a stand. It's freedom's final chorus sung across this burning land.
They know the coins you've never seen. Every wallet traced from birth. The telescreen sees everything now. Nowhere to hide, nowhere to run. But in the shadows there's a door, a place that cameras can't reach anymore. Confidential layer, we disappear. Zeno burns the chains away, invisible to everything they fear. We meant our freedom today. Confidential layer sets us free. Confidential layer sets us free. Confidential layer sets us free. They built the prison while you slept, but we found the room above the shop. The secret that the pros have kept, a layer where surveillance stops. Confidential layer, we disappear. Zeno burns the chains away, invisible to everything they fear. We meant our freedom today. Confidential layer sets us free. Confidential layer sets us free. Confidential layer sets us free. They're watching, but they'll never see. Confidential layer sets us free.
The land don't breathe like it used to breathe. My grandfather held the soil like scripture in his hands. But now the fields are wired tight, a fortune of nearly 500 billion running under satellite light. Just 2% decide the table for 330 million souls, while the hum of iron engines sends our birthright to the cold. They're pulling 5 gigabytes an hour, rising like a predator now, send upward to a corporate sky. The farmers locked outside. And though nearly 20 million work the gears, only a tiny handful touch the land. The machine grows tall, the people small, their stories slipping from their hands. Oh, the root remembers freedom, even buried in the dark. You can chain the lie with numbers, but you cannot change the spark. This ain't farming, it's a wheel of steel and coal. Your grandfather's farm's a checkpoint on a technocratic road. They take the seed, they take the soil, they take the hours from your spine, and the machine keeps pulling everything 1 acre at a time. A quarter of the world's sea, locked behind the corporate gate. You can't save your own just by again Let algorithms choose your fate. And nearly 10 billion animals push through corridors of chrome. Where the land once sang, the servers drone. What used to feed now grown. There's over 3 trillion in liquidity. Farmers rent but never keep. And well over 300 billion in debt, pulling families in deep. Call it progress, call it glory, but I've read the hidden lines. The machine is fed by labor, and it starves the working mind. The land still knows your footsteps, even under grids and wires. The machine can dim the daylight, but it cannot drown the fire. This ain't farming, it's a wheel of steel and coal. A tiny few hold the compass for the many down below. They count your days, they count your years, they tally blood and time, and the machine keeps taking families down, one story at a time. Your grandfather's land's been patterned, your pasture quantified, but no algorithm knows the truth of what your hands decide. This ain't farming, it's a kingdom built on screens. They turn the soil to a number, turn the farmers into means. But the land remembers kindness, and the people still alive. We outlive every empire, one heartbeat at a time. Live free or die, but that's not the worst. It's waking up empty, it's dying of thirst. Trading your days for insurance and pills, while the machine builds your cage and you're paying the bill. Quiet desperation, that's the real grave. A life half lived as a comfortable slave. This ain't what you were born for, you know it's true. You feel it in your chest, breaking through. They're wiring the walls, closing in, tracking your dollars underneath your skin. Left and right, same throne, same crown. No one stands up, no one makes a sound. They hand you a ballot like it means something real. 2 wings of one bird, same deal, same steel. We say no, no to the chase, no to the dollar running through our veins, no to the white coats, no to the lies. This is the day that we rise. It's hers right here, it's hers right now. Your rights are yours, you take them back, not giving out. Not from the left, not from the right. They were always yours, now step into the light. The daylight breaks, a new day comes. We take it back, every last one. Live free or die, we fan the flame. Nothing will ever be the same. same. Fan the flame. Fan the flame. Fan the flame. Whoa, whoa, whoa. Tom and Mary Johnson, Maple Street's in 99. He's at the kitchen table, 6 a.m., the screen's blue light. She's got the smart speaker listening, every whisper, every prayer. Their daughter's face lit up at midnight by the tablet's empty stare. Signed 1,000 agreements, never read a single line. You said you will own nothing, it was always the design. Tom checked his retirement, thought he had it saved away. But he's just holding IOUs, the banks get paid first when it breaks. He bought the coin that promised him would set his family free. But every transaction on the chain was there for all to see. Mary got the diagnosis, found her records had been sold. They want us to own nothing, not our health, our wealth, our soul. Then one night at the kitchen table, hands around the coffee cup, Tom looked at Mary and Mary looked at Tom, and both said, that's enough. We'll own none but our freedom. Well, and where they cannot see, we'll own nothing but tomorrow. Wallet to wallet, find it free. They say we'll own nothing. Well, we'll own our destiny. We found another way. Now they're trading private coins, no ledger they can read. Money that can't be frozen, transactions they can't see. Daughter's learning in her kitchen, not a screen that steals her soul. Son knows how to build things on nothing they control. Found 1,000 other families, wallets lean but names unknown. When they said we'd own nothing, we build a world they'll never own. We'll own nothing but our freedom, building where they cannot see. We'll own nothing but tomorrow, wallet to wallet, finally free. They said we'll own nothing, well, we'll own our destiny. We found another way. If you already own nothing, what you got to lose? If they already took it all, what's left for you to choose? You can sit and wait for permission, or you can finally move. Oh, nothing, then build everything. We got nothing left to lose. We'll own nothing but our freedom, building where they cannot see. We'll own nothing but tomorrow, wallet to wallet, finally free. They said we'll own nothing, well, we'll own our destiny. We found another way. Tom and Mary Johnson, they don't own a thing they say, but they got nothing left to lose now. Come and build another way.
Welcome back to the Aaron Day Show. This is season 2, episode 51. Hold on one sec. Let me get the slides going. There's a lot of information in tonight's episode. In fact, I'm not even sure how much of it we're gonna get through. The big thing that we're going to be doing is I made major improvements to the ownnothing.org site. And if anybody can just let me know how the audio is, I think I at least have the right microphone set up here today. In any event, the overall theme, which I've talked about before, is that America 1.0 is over. And I'm going to walk through why I say that and what it means. And the whole point of the Own Nothing site, this originally came out of an article that I wrote where I was talking about tokenization, but I was looking at the fact that people sign these click wrap agreements, for everything, for Apple, for iTunes, for your cell phone, for your stock brokerage agreement. And when I looked into these things, which actually I was already aware of because my last company actually had a click wrap agreement. And so I know what the deal is. The deal is, you put 40, 50, 100 pages into a contract, nobody reads it, and people give their rights away and they just scroll and click. So the original idea behind Own Nothing was to put together a website that allowed you to put links in for the contracts and to be able to analyze quickly with a scoring system what they mean. And then what I found, the more that I studied it, is that contracts are only a small portion of how we own nothing. And the owning nothing actually starts with our attention being hijacked, which I'm going to show you tonight, which I've integrated into the site. There's our attention. Then there's what the government does to us without contracts. Then a couple of episodes, we actually wrote a book on here using Mike Adams' engine about the panopticon in schools and how kids are being tracked. Again, no contract signed. So I've completely redone the site to include not just contracts. And in fact, I realized we don't need to go into the detail of everybody logging individual contracts because it turns out the contracts are all basically the same by industry. So once you get the industry pattern, you have industry lobbyists that push for laws. Then the laws are standardized. Once you understand the pattern, you don't need to see all the contracts. They're all the same. You can basically go through and do a quick assessment and say, oh yeah, I have something of this type. And now you know what rights have been given up. So I have materially expanded the site in a way that the goal is to wake people up and to let them know the song that I just played that I put together last night. The whole point behind the song is that we have nothing left to lose. We've already given up our rights. The only question is, do you know that you've given up your rights? So then the answer to that is, what are we going to do about it? And this is developing parallel systems. This is everything that we're doing with Freedom Forge and everything that we're doing with privacy coins and Above Phone and OSARA and all these different projects that we have to build parallel systems. But people don't realize they need parallel systems. People are not awake. So the Own Nothing site is now the site that is designed to wake people up. And it's still beta. It was in alpha, now it's in beta. All of these sites, all 6 of them that you can link to from daylightfreedom.org, will be fully ready and fully integrated by the end of January. But it's moving in pieces, which you'll note as you follow this podcast from week to week. But it will all get done and it will all make sense. So tonight I'm going to show you quite a bit of interesting material on Own Nothing. And again, always looking for feedback on these things. But I want to make that point that America 1.0 is over. And then people get upset and they say, oh, well, if you don't like it here, move to Somalia or whatever it happens to be. But that's comes from a place of not understanding exactly how far we've fallen. So we're going to go through that tonight. But before we do that, we'll kind of recap the last couple of episodes. The last episode was an exciting one on the solutions front, where I talked about confidential layer. And if you listen to the second song that I played tonight was a music video that I didn't have time to play until the very, very end of the podcast. So if you were all 4 hours in, you got to see it last time. But confidential layer is a phenomenal technology because it allows you to take Bitcoin, Ethereum, Solana, all of these other blockchains that combine have over $2 trillion worth of purchasing power, of market capitalization. And then on top of that, the tokens created on those platforms like Ethereum and Solana, which may even be more than $2 trillion, those will be able to be made private through confidential layer as well. So we're basically tokenizing Bitcoin, Ethereum, Solana, and then the tokens that are created on those things. So this is really a privacy layer solution. This is a solution that takes these transparent systems, which turns out to be a real problem for people in terms of surveillance, not only by the government, but, as I discussed last week, wrench attacks, people being kidnapped and threatened with physical violence if they don't give up their keys. So confidential layer is huge. And as I said, I'm going to do more about confidential layer over the next month or so, really around, I'm reorganizing how to create online materials to help people, to help onboard people. And I realize we've got to really think about that from the ground up. And that there are people that are coming into this at different levels, beginner, intermediate, advanced. Some people want written materials. Some people want, maybe a full course that explains, well, what are these things? Not just download a wallet. The question is, well, what is a wallet, right? So I've spent a lot of time kind of designing that, and this is going to be through Freedom Forge. But I encourage you to take a look at that episode because it's important, and it's important for everyone that that thinks Bitcoin is private needs to understand that it's not, and needs to understand the implications of that from a physical perspective and from a tracking and confiscation perspective. And so I'll play this very short video about confidential layer, 50 seconds.
We have achieved something unprecedented, a unified ideology, a world built on the pure, incorruptible foundation of Bitcoin, the money of the future. It is destiny. One cause, one resolve, the Bitcoin standard. Those who resist, who cling to shadow systems and contradictory truths, shall be silenced by the unstoppable engine of adoption. The Bitcoin standard is perfect. It is the future. We will prevail.
July 2025, confidential layer went live, allowing Bitcoin and Ethereum users to bridge their coins onto a completely private by default protocol, giving power back to the people. Whether traditional finance likes it or not, Bitcoin is now private.
So I thought that was a great nod to 1984. And actually, before I get into this, you probably might not be able to see this very well, but there were protests this weekend in the UK about digital ID. David Icke, a whole bunch of other people, that mass protests in the UK against digital ID. And and I wrote a post about this. We see a lot of people here saying, laughing at the people in the UK about how bad their situation is, not realizing that what they're proposing in the UK doesn't go into effect until 2029. There are people laughing and mocking people in the UK that already have Real ID, which is a digital ID. And in fact, the plan is for Real ID to be completely digital in all 50 states by 2027. Where are our protests? This is the thing that I keep talking about week after week, which is the problem that we have with this last election is that, the election was technocracy with resistance versus technocracy without resistance. And we picked technocracy without resistance because, in essence, we're allowing technocracy to accelerate, whether it's through Palantir or backdoor CBDCs with the Genius Act or Real ID, and no one's protesting. We have no protests like this. What are we protesting anywhere? I mean, do people actually think the state of affairs is a good one right now in this country? I mean, the amount of apathy that we have here is pretty shocking. So I'm going to show you, well, I'm not even going to go through the sites just in the interest of time. But we launched the early beta of OSARA a couple weeks ago, week and a half ago. It's going live on January the 1st. A lot of people say, well, how can I get FreedomDollar? How can I get Zano? One way to do it is to participate in our bounty program. We're offering up to $1,000 total in FreedomDollar for people to actually report bugs, suggest features, so on and so forth. And I'm going to be doing this with the other projects as well. I mean, they actually have to get to the point where I can reliably put them out and be able to track bugs and that kind of thing. So some of them are even in a little more earlier state than that. But you can earn FreedomDollar right now at osr.com, and there's going to be quite a bit of upgrades to that site before it goes live on January the 1st. I think, and this medical tourism marketplace is just the start. You've probably noticed they failed again in the Congress to fix the healthcare issue that came about that was a big part of the government shutdown. And they still haven't fixed it. And the Republicans didn't pass, their social credit expand HSA thing and everything else. But more and more I'm seeing posts. People are just saying they're fed up. They're going to cancel their insurance. They're not getting anything out of it. They have these high deductible plans. It doesn't protect them from bankruptcy. So a big part of the push of OSR next year is to get people to form medical trusts to protect their assets so that you don't go into bankruptcy, even with insurance, which, by the way, one person every minute in this country files for bankruptcy due to medical bills. 75% of those are insured. Your insurance doesn't protect you from catastrophic loss. We have all these statements that people make about insurance. People get locked into these patterns. Well, it's there for catastrophic coverage. It doesn't cover you for that. Doesn't work for that. Failed, objectively failed. And then you see people talk about, well, freedom with HSAs. HSAs aren't freedom. It's the IRS telling you what percentage of your money you can spend only on things that the healthcare system deems to be healthcare, which, by the way, aren't things that can actually improve your health. Can't spend any of it on food or peptides or anything that might actually improve your health. You can only use it to buy medication that keeps you sick. Those aren't solutions. No one is offering a solution. The Republicans and Democrats offer nothing to address the root causes of the healthcare crisis that we have through our system. Quick update on Technocracy Atlas. I've indexed a lot of additional materials. There are going to be hundreds of books and audio clips that are going up there. And then one thing that I've done from a technical perspective is I'm adding the ability for you to be able to search and not only pull up text, but you're going to be able to pull up images, and you're, in select cases, starting with the aarondayshow.com, you're going to be able to search videos and actually pull up the clip. But it's not even just like searching the text. You're going to be able to go in and I'm using this new engine. You're going to be able to say, hey, which episodes was Aaron wearing red glasses? And it actually scans and indexes the information, not just on the transcript, but what's in there visually. So you'll be able to search the slides and everything else. It's estimated, that Friday is the day the new Epstein files are coming out. So I have all of the Epstein files that exist so far on there. So everything that the AG previously released, everything that the House released, including the 9 pictures and so forth. So the Technocracy Atlas is going to get a big boost, not only in terms of the amount of information, but your ability to search images, text, and video. So I'm very excited about that. And I'm going to be bringing that to all of our sites. And in fact, I'll get a second camera so I can show you the setup at some point here. But I'm spending a lot of time now. I keep my computers running 24/7, and they're always doing work. And so when I'm not working on them, when I'm not coding, and when I'm not doing podcasts, the CPUs and the GPUs are pretty much maxed out, taking information, scraping information, indexing information, so that we have primary source material for all of the various initiatives that we're working on. And so that's going to benefit all of the different sites that we're working on. So stay tuned on Technocracy Atlas. May do a bounty program on that as well, because the Technocracy Atlas is also in the beta phase. The biggest challenges that we have with that is, one, all right, you have all this information. People don't even know where to start. They don't even know what questions to ask. So I'm spending a lot of time thinking about the interface, how to let people know even where to begin, what to search for. But then the more important thing is we want to empower people to be able to start doing some crowdsourced investigative research through this tool. That was always the original vision. So exciting things coming with Technocracy Atlas. I always encourage you to go to theaarondayshow.com to watch the episodes and to start moving over there. And as I said, the chatbot is going to be you're going to be able to search videos, you're going to be able to search memes, you're going to be able to search all of the various content right there. And I have backed up all of the content. Every single one of the Aaron Day Show episodes is now on IPFS, which means it's truly censorship resistant. I haven't changed the interface yet, so you're still, primarily viewing YouTube videos, but all of the videos have been backed up with IPFS. So if I get kicked off of YouTube, you're still going to be able to see all of the historical content, and we'll still be able to publish and keep the show going. So I'm moving towards that approach. And there are a lot of other features. I'm going to be integrating and releasing. These music videos are going to be part of it, and we're adding more songs and more content and a lot more interactivity. So I encourage you to start looking at theaarondayshow.com. As we've talked about, and in fact, we'll see if we create yet another book in the chat this week. But Mike Adams has continued to ramp up books.brightu.ai. He's up to like 650 books now, or maybe even more than that. And he just sent me a message this morning. They're going to start translating these books into Spanish, and they're going to start making the books available kind of in podcast form as well. So this is going to continue to grow. So this is really democratizing information. One of the things I'm going to do is with select podcasts where, there's enough content to warrant it, I'm actually going to create books related to each one of these episodes. So, that if people want more in-depth information, there will be a book there as well. My plan is to have Mike on before the end of the year, which I've got to figure out how to schedule soon so that we can talk about the developments in AI. And I'd love to actually just show you guys what I'm doing, how I'm doing it. I show you what I'm doing, but just so that to share the knowledge on that and to help empower people, because these tools are absolutely incredible, which you'll see just when we go through Technocracy Atlas, the stuff that I've been able to add just since we did, from ownnothing.org, what I've been able to add to that site in a relatively short period of time. So getting into tonight's topic. So I'm going to show you something uncomfortable. And I want to be clear, I'm not trying to demoralize people. I'm not trying to make you feel helpless. But I'm here because you can't fix what you can't see. And right now, Americans are walking around with blindfolds they didn't know they put on. This is the big issue with this, is people are just not aware. We have swallowed a lot of propaganda and we don't realize it. So the show Newsroom, which was an Aaron Sorkin show, and I know he wrote The West Wing and everything else. He's a big liberal, although I wish we had somebody on our side with the screenwriting ability. There was an episode of Newsroom where a college student asked the question, what makes America the greatest country in the world? And by the way, I'm going to play this clip shortly. And the character played by Jeff Daniels says he loses it. He rattles off statistic after statistic. We're 7th in literacy, 27th in math, 22nd in science, 49th in life expectancy, so on and so forth. Rattles off these numbers. And in the end says, we're not the best country, and I'll play the clip. I don't want to spoil the delivery, because the delivery was excellent. But here's what we do lead the world in. The number of incarcerated citizens per capita, the number of adults who believe in angels are real, defense spending. And we spend more than the next 26 countries combined on defense spending, 25 of whom are allies. So these are just facts. So this isn't, so when you hear people say we're the greatest country in the world, it's literally not based on anything. And I think a lot of people are living in an old universe, like they're kind of in a post-World War II haze, or maybe even going back to the 80s, but the world has passed us by. And so that clip I'm going to show you is from 2012, and the rant felt like a wake-up call. It was very controversial at the time. It went viral. People shared it everywhere. It was supposed to be a moment where maybe we snapped out of it. And unfortunately, instead, people hit the snooze button and rolled over. Because if you look at the numbers, The health outcomes have gotten worse. In fact, in almost every one of the metrics he talks about in 2012, it's gotten worse. And including trust in institutions themselves. Only 20% trust the federal government to do the right thing most of the time. This isn't cynicism. It's the collapse of the integrity of the system itself. In fact, I don't even know if it's 20%. I mean, if you look at Congress is single digits. So when we sit here and we still try to claim, and people get all defensive about being the best country in the world, well, if everybody doesn't believe in these institutions and they don't believe in Congress, and then all the objective data is here, then we're not facing reality. So we measure everything else. Our credit score tells banks how obedient we are with debt. Our social media metrics tell advertisers how valuable our attention is. Our medical records tell insurance companies how much risk we represent. But nobody's measuring how free you are. Nobody's asking how captured is your life by systems you didn't choose and don't control. That's what ownnothing.org does. It looks at 6, actually, I think I expanded it to 7, and it may change further, dimensions where your sovereignty has been quietly surrendered, often without realizing it was happening. So your attention, your money, your health decisions, your contract rights, your privacy from surveillance, your ownership, actual ownership of the things that you own. Most Americans, when they look at these areas, discover something disturbing. They've already surrendered most of their sovereignty, not through some dramatic moment of defeat, not through signing away their rights in some obvious contract, but through thousands of tiny concessions, month after month, year after year, through convenience, through defaults they never questioned, through terms of service they never read. So America 1.0 is over. It's not a political statement. It's not doomer talk. It's just reality. The systems that existed, the implicit deal between citizens and institutions, that's done. It's been done. The window is closing. It hasn't closed yet, but what we do in the next 12 to 24 months determines, what comes next, whether you're a sovereign individual or inventory in someone else's system. And Hakeem was on, and I the more and more research that I do, and there are actually some metrics on Technocracy Atlas that measure where we are with CBDCs, digital ID, and surveillance. I think we have next year where if we don't have people using parallel systems, if we haven't built parallel systems that can scale, we're toast. I think next year is the year. This is why I'm working 14, 16 hours a day. In fact, I'm exhausted right now. I'm going back down to Florida. I've got to get some sun. But I am working feverishly for this end of January because I feel like if I don't have the tools that I've been talking about ready, where at least there's the beginnings of a parallel system for healthcare. And then we have, I need to come up with some better ways to onboard people to Zano and FreedomDollar and everything else. Unless, these aren't my projects, but I have been all over the United States, and my wife and I have been around 27 states, 3 or 4 different countries now for the last couple of years talking about this. And we need to make scalable solutions to onboard people, and the materials and the things that I put together so far are not good enough, because a lot of the people that we're onboarding have no previous experience with this stuff. And so we have to figure out a way, and me going and doing 100 people, 200 people at a time at a workshop isn't going to cut it. I can't do that next year. I mean, if I do one workshop, it's got to be for people that already know how it works because they've been onboarded with the tools. And now we're doing more important things like trying to make connections so that people can start collaborating together on parallel solutions. It's not going to make sense to do that level of onboarding. Those days are over. So today we're going to walk through the 6 dimensions, and we're going to look at how the capture happened. And more importantly, we're going to talk about what to do about it. The song that I played at the beginning, it will be a music video. I actually had problems getting that done, but I actually created an entire Own Nothing soundtrack that I'm pretty happy about. So I'm going to end up releasing all of those songs. Not all of them are music videos. The music videos they actually cost a lot of money to produce because I'm using a bunch of different video models and everything else. And so I'll do a new music video every episode, but I could do more. But I want to get feedback on which songs people like the most. So to kind of set a bar for what goes from, a song to warranting a music video that we put in the show. So let's start with the newsroom clip, and then we can go from there. I think this is a great way to set the stage for this idea that America 1.0 is over.
Let's move on to the next question. Go ahead.
Hi, my name is Jenny. I'm a sophomore, and this is for all three of you. Can you say in one sentence or less what... you know what I mean. Can you say why America is the greatest country in the world?
Diversity and opportunity.
Lewis?
Freedom and freedom. So let's keep it that way.
Will?
The New York Jets.
No, I'm going to hold you to an answer on that. What makes America the greatest country in the world?
Well, Lewis and Sharon said it. Diversity and opportunity and freedom and freedom.
I'm not letting you go back to the airport without answering the question.
Well, our Constitution is a masterpiece. James Madison was a genius. The Declaration of Independence is, for me, the single greatest piece of American writing. You don't look satisfied.
One's a set of laws and the other's a declaration of war. I want a human moment from you. What about the people? Why is America
Not the greatest country in the world, Professor. That's my answer.
You're saying...
Yes.
Let's talk about...
Fine. Sharon, the NEA is a loser. Yeah, it accounts for a penny out of our paycheck, but he gets to hit you with it anytime he wants. It doesn't cost money. It costs votes. It costs airtime and column inches. You know why people don't like liberals? Because they lose. If liberals are so fucking smart, how come they lose so goddamn always? Hey. And with a straight face, you're going to tell students that America is so star-spangled awesome that we're the only ones in the world who have freedom? Canada has freedom. Japan has freedom. The UK, France, Italy, Germany, Spain, Australia, Belgium has freedom. So 207 sovereign states in the world, like 180 of them have freedom.
All right.
And yeah, you, sorority girl, just in case you accidentally wander into a voting booth one day, there's some things you should know. And one of them is, there is absolutely no evidence to support the statement that we're the greatest country in the world. We're 7th in literacy, 27th in math, 22nd in science, 49th in life expectancy, 178th in infant mortality, 3rd in median household income, number 4 in labor force, and number 4 in exports. We lead the world in only 3 categories: number of incarcerated citizens per capita, number of adults who believe angels are real, and defense spending, where we spend more than the next 26 countries combined, 25 of whom are allies. Now, none of this is the fault of a 20-year-old college student, but you nonetheless are, without a doubt, a member of the worst generation ever. So when you ask what makes us the greatest country in the world, I don't know what the fuck you're talking about. Yosemite? Sure used to be. We stood up for what was right. We fought for moral reasons. We passed laws, struck down laws for moral reasons. We waged wars on poverty, not poor people. We sacrificed. We cared about our neighbors. We put our money where our mouths were, and we never beat our chest. We built great big things, made ungodly technological advances, explored the universe, cured diseases, and we cultivated the world's greatest artists and the world's greatest economy. We reached for the stars, acted like men. We aspired to intelligence. We didn't belittle it. It didn't make us feel inferior. We didn't identify ourselves by who we voted for in the last election, and we didn't scare so easy. We were able to be all these things and do all these things because we were informed by great men, men who were revered. First step in solving any problem is recognizing there is one. America is not the greatest country in the world anymore. Enough?
So I think that pretty much brilliantly summarizes the sentiment. And, that was 13 years ago, right? Everything's gotten worse from them. But the last statement that he said, we're not the greatest country in the world. And unless you recognize that, you're not going to be able to make any improvements or make any changes. And I think we are in a state of complete and total delusion right now. And the more you dig into it and the more you research it, I mean, I have talked a lot about China and everything else. People need to get out more and see what's going on in the world. We have watched the world pass us by. So that's it. I'm going to walk through the fact that it's from an objective perspective, all of the things that he was talking about, the metrics have actually gotten much, much worse. So we are currently ranked 49th in life expectancy. And based on the projections right now, by 2050, we're likely to be 66th. We've actually had declining life expectancy even before COVID. So this, despite the fact that we spend $4 trillion a year on healthcare, more per capita than anywhere in the world. Objectively, we're not getting better results for this. And literally, babies are dying. We have the highest infant mortality of any high-income country on earth. Our infant mortality rate is 5.34 per 1,000, which is ranked, 33rd. Japan and Norway, by comparison, are 1.7 per 1,000. So what are we doing with all of the spending? And again, this is part of the motivation. Well, as I've discussed, I have a long history with the medical system, and I've spent a lot of time researching the origins of public health, working directly within insurance, working with corporations, working with hospitals. So from direct experience, I've learned that, as I say many times, if you started from scratch, there isn't a single person listening to this podcast that couldn't come up with a better system than what we have. It's not a matter of an HSA or an insurance plan or whether or not, there's an Affordable Care Act. The system is structurally broken from the way doctors are trained and educated, certified, the way the financial incentives are structured, the regulation and the regulatory capture with the FDA and other entities. It's not fixable, and it shouldn't be complied with, which of course is always a thing that, I talk about. But we spend 17.8% of our GDP on healthcare. And so, I mean, it's become a wealth extraction tool with no benefit whatsoever. It's not like, well, yeah, I'd be willing to pay 17.9% if I could live forever, if I were living a healthier, happier life. Americans not only are we not living longer, the lives that we are living, we're living less healthy. We are at historic lows in terms of our scores on testing, like math. We're ranked, I think, there's something called a PISA score. We're ranked 28th. We've been dropping in this area. Singapore beats us by 110 points. Reading and science are better, but not in any way that's materially useful or worth talking about. We're 7th in reading, 10th in science. Kids aren't educated. I mean, at this point they're warehoused, and we could talk at length about the public education system was never designed to educate people. The public education system was designed to create worker bees. And Rockefeller heavily influenced this by stepping in when public schools had no pension funds. And he actually funded teacher pensions in exchange for essentially taking over control of the curriculum. So now and what Rockefeller wanted is he wanted workers, and his fellow industrialists wanted worker bees that work shifts. So by having public school overlap with prime working hours, you would have kids in an environment where They were essentially offered daycare while also being trained to be worker bees, trained to follow bells, trained to be indoctrinated on certain types of information, not to think critically. Rockefeller and Carnegie didn't want competitors. They wanted workers. And that is how the system was designed. And that actually wasn't the founding of public education. You can go back even before that and dig into the history there. One of my favorite books is the NEA Trojan Horse in American Education, which provides a good history. Gatto has written a series of books that are phenomenal in terms of talking about the history of education. So it's unfixable. It's not bad just because we're not competing. It's bad because the intention of it was never focused on human, potential. Never focused on actually teaching people how to think. It was teaching people what to think, always about indoctrination. Curriculum taken initially from the Prussians, very much heavily influenced by socialism, actually, from the beginning. The other one is free speech. This is the funny one. Obviously, I'm not going to do a rant yet, or maybe later, on Musk and the whole freedom of speech, freedom of reach thing. But, you would think, based on what he's saying, is that he's saved free speech in America, and then the implication is that America is the free speech capital of the world. Neither of those things are true. We are ranked. I'm actually trying to get the specific. We fell out of the top 20. We're not even in the top 20 for free speech. In fact, I'm seeing here Reporters Without Borders dropped us from satisfactory to number 55, problematic. We're now ranked with Gambia, Uruguay, Sierra Leone for speech. So when you think that, we have the First Amendment, what does that mean? We're ranked 55th. And how many of you realized we're ranked 55th? I mean, you probably thought, well, if we're not first, then we must be, second or third, or at least in the top 10. We're not even, and we haven't been. So we have swallowed the propaganda about the Constitution and the Bill of Rights as if these things are actually real and are active, which they aren't. They haven't been for a long time. I mean, and this isn't, a lot of people just woke up during COVID. This didn't start with COVID. This just caused some people to wake up in some ways. They actually generally have not woken up to understanding what's actually going on. They actually think that the COVID thing was a fluke. They don't even realize, here we are, 55th in this category and low in all of these other categories. Happiness, we are ranked 24th, a record low. Our all-time high, ironically, was in 2012 when that newsroom clip aired. So, Finland has been number one for 8 straight years. So again, I could go through metric after metric because I'm not just cherry picking these. You actually have to go out and find what we are number one at. So we are number one at incarceration rate. I guess there's some good news there. I guess we've improved. We're number 5th in incarceration rate. So we can take that one off the table. We have 1.8 million people behind bars, but we are still number one in defense. That is our thing. That is our one thing that we lead the world in, is defense. So you can make up your own mind as to whether we're a force for good. That would be a good debate. I wish Christopher Hitchens were around, although he might take the different position on this. Whether or not we're a force of good, but that is the only thing that we lead in. And there's this perception that we lead in innovation, that we lead in entrepreneurship in Silicon Valley and so on and so forth. And so Mike Adams actually introduced me. I wasn't aware of how bad it was. I mean, I knew we weren't what we thought we were, but even in this category, from 2003 to 2007, we led China in 60 out of 64 technology categories. Now, the latest time window, China leads in 57 categories. And they are not the categories that you would expect. These are not like minor like niche categories. These are categories like quantum computing, 5G, drones, electric vehicles, batteries, solar, semiconductors, space. Think about it. We're not exposed. We only hear about what goes on here. We don't even know what goes on there. So when you do dig into this, you realize, wow, something's happened here. And just in the last 15, 20 years, and we don't even realize it. I've said many times, Musk ripped off WeChat. He bought Twitter to basically replicate WeChat, which is the Chinese everything app tied into their social credit systems. The more I've dug into it, he's ripped off more things from China. So the narrative used to be China's a bunch of dirt, poor farmers, and they're starving, and you better finish, all the food on your plate because people are starving and don't even have enough rice to eat. And then it was China was stealing all our intellectual property. Now it's just we're getting crushed in every major category. And I will tell you this, they will catch us in AI. That is one of the ones that they're not ahead in. That's not one of the 57. It will be. They're closing the gap. They're about 90 days away. And the truth is that when people talk about AGI and everything else, they have an infrastructure, energy infrastructure that is far superior to ours, unless some of these really amazing technologies that others have come on and talked about that are supposed to happen, that have been promised and discussed, things involving plasma and so on and so forth. And that may happen. And hopefully it does. But even in that area, I just saw it this morning, China's ahead in that. But if things don't materially change, we haven't improved our energy grid at all. It's deteriorated. And so all of these data centers, China doesn't have an issue of having to ration electricity or having to build more infrastructure for electricity. So again, the number of Americans, ask yourself, did you know that? Unless you heard it here, had you heard that China's had 57 out of 64? And how many of your friends and family are aware of this? So, I mean, this didn't happen overnight. And, I think I've argued, and by the way, it's my most viral tweet ever, and I actually have repeated it a couple of times in different ways, is that Americans are the most brainwashed people on earth. That's very popular. I didn't write it just to go viral, but apparently it struck a nerve. Even in North Korea, North Koreans know they're being lied to. We're still in a state of complete disbelief. I mean, I almost wonder at some point, does Trump even know? Like he's acting as if he's serving Reagan's third term and we're still in the 1980s. Even the posturing with tariffs. China doesn't need us. We're not a huge percentage of what they need. He's got this view that we are the dominant player and indispensable. And when he's put these tariffs on some of these technology areas, the reaction has been China has just outdeveloped. And they've created better technology. So it's completely backfired, just as you would have expected. So anyway, national rankings show America's not number one. But what I wanted to do with ownnothing.org was figure out how are you captured individually. So, and by the way, as I said, it's expanded from 6 to 7. This is why, and it's going to be a living thing, right? I'm looking for input on this, but I've spent a lot of time, and a lot of it's because of these podcasts and talking to people and getting some different perspectives on this. And so there are some areas on the site that I know, for instance, like government surveillance. And we know what Edward Snowden told us, and people don't think about that, but there's, our constitutional rights are being violated all of the time. And now we have Palantir and everything else. So I'm going to be putting together some information that just says, and then I'll probably put together some short videos that just show this is how you're being tracked across all these dimensions today. I posted something, today where it's like, somebody said, oh yeah, I'm concerned about privacy. I use Proton Mail. And then it's like this collage of drones and all of the different ways that the government is tracking us, independent of contracts, independent of what we sign up for voluntarily. As I wrote in my book, there are more surveillance cameras per capita in the United States than China. Every time I hear a politician say, we don't want to become like communist China, we want to protect financial privacy and everything else, it's as bad or worse here. And some people like to say China's the model, but we're actually leading the way in many of the surveillance technologies. We're not necessarily duplicating them. We're leading the way. It's kind of a joint effort. And you remember during COVID when they were very aggressive with lockdowns, and they were forcing people to stay in their homes, and then you'd see these pictures of people wearing complete coverings, spraying the area, and then you would have people like Gavin Newsom, and you have other leaders from the West cheering on the authoritarianism and the control that China has. I mean, the only thing that's stopping the U.S. from doing that is incompetence. It's not intent. It's like I like to say with social credit systems. People are like, oh, we don't want to have a social credit system, but we do. It's the tax code. 75,000 pages, 16 million words. And what do those words say? Those words are penalties and incentives, encouraging you to do one thing or another. Buy a house, do this, save for college, right? We're going to give you a better deal if you save for college. You can put this in HSAs, but if you don't do this, you're going to get penalized. That's a social credit system. That is penalties and incentives. The difference is we don't have an app, but we've got 75,000 pages. Which is better? Is it better to have an app where you know how you're being tracked and what the penalties and incentives are, or to have a situation where no one can possibly understand what the rules are, and if you get it wrong, you go to prison? I'd argue what we have is worse. The only thing that stopped us is technical incompetence. But now that we have Peter Thiel and we have David Sachs and we have Elon Musk, well, they're going to be able to bring that. And so everyone out there cheering on efficiency and AI and government understand that just the application of AI to enforcing the tax code is a worse social credit system than even China could come up with. So as I thought about this, again, 6-7 dimensions, I realized that there's something that even supersedes your contractual rights. What have you given away in terms of your data or your privacy or your economic ownership in something or your voting rights or whatever that happens to be? No, it's your attention. Who's captured your mind? And I'll go through, and one of the things that I've done with the Own Nothing site is a lot of the content I'm going to deliver here in a short form during the podcast, I've encapsulated in visual form on the site so people can have a quick way of going through and understanding these concepts. So, I've realized in looking through the podcast and trying to make this more efficient, I'm like, okay, rather than say the same stuff all the time, here's kind of the educational piece, but now we can put together tools where people can actually not only see what I'm talking about, but there are quizzes and everything where you can kind of do a self-assessment on where you are. So what percentage of your brain runs other people's scripts? The average American spends 7 hours a day on screen time. So, our attention is the product being sold. This is what big tech has been monetizing. And I'm not saying tech is bad. I use tech more than 7 hours a day. The question is, are you using it actively or are you using it passively? Which is a big deal in all of these things. And so I actually created something called an NPC test, which is a survey you can fill out that kind of gives you an assessment. So you can see, hey, based on a day, this is who's programming me. I'm getting this bit from Netflix. I'm getting this bit from Google. I'm getting this bit from this person. So this is a big piece of it. So I'll show you that survey. Then the next area of this is, do you own your own money? We talk about this a lot. And by the way, once you go through and you do these assessments, hopefully what happens with people is they realize we have nothing to lose. This is what I keep on saying over and over again, that we have to build these parallel systems. We're already in a digital prison and we just don't know it. Once you realize that, like, what are you holding on to? So in the interest of, the dollar's lost 87% of its purchasing power just since 1971. It's lost 99% total. I've talked at length about all of the different ways our current system is being surveilled. Now we have backdoor CBDCs. We had gold confiscation. Then we had Nixon abandoning the gold standard. Now we have a situation where banks don't even have fractional reserve requirements. And you don't own your stocks. You don't own the voting rights in your stocks. And when the next collapse happens, the banks will end up owning your retirement income. You don't own your own money unless you have a self-custody asset, but then you were promised Bitcoin was going to be the answer. And then it turns out that's hijacked digital surveillance gold that the government can track. And the government can seize, and most new people getting involved never even touch a Bitcoin. They own it through one of these financial instruments, the same financial instruments that will go to the large commercial banks in a financial collapse. So this is already, we don't own our money. We don't have control over our attention. And then the big area for me when I started on this was health. And then I went through this thing where I'm like, well, we're going to do all these click wrap agreements. And then I realized people, if you're using drugs, prescription drugs, you're subject to package inserts that you don't sign and almost no one reads. And if you do, it's like it's like reading a fortune cookie. It's like the whole thing is fine print. So one of the things that I've created, which may be better in OSARA, but I've actually created a database of all 11,000 plus package inserts sorted by the warnings, which once you see what they are, they're absurd, right? I mean, you see all this stuff like, could cause death, could cause whatever it happens to be. You can sort that, and there's a chat bot. So you can just learn about, it'll be an interesting experience for you if you're on any of these prescription drugs to see, well, if these drugs are so great, why is there no liability? And why are all of these risks on package inserts that you never even saw, but that basically say that the product is harmful? They're telling you the product is harmful. And then if the product does harm, you have no legal recourse. Excuse me. This is the basic structure. So I've created that. And I've also created, as I've talked about, hospitals are by law supposed to provide pricing information. This was a 2021 law. Well, it turns out that there's a little exit clause in there that says, well, they can not share the pricing information and just pay a fee of $300 plus. It could be more than $300 a day. It could be more than that. Well, something like 87% of hospitals choose to pay the fine rather than show the pricing. So I have created an entire map, interactive map, where you can search and you can see whether or not the hospitals in your area provide transparency or not. And for the hospitals that do provide transparency, I've downloaded all of the pricing information so that you can see the comparative pricing. And then you can compare that pricing to OSARA and medical tourism. This is eye-opening. And by the way, for those 87% of hospitals that don't, one of the things I'm going to add next is the ability, and I showed as a clip last time, I'm going to play it again because I'm seeing more and more of these. These are unsolicited. I'm going to play this clip because what I want to see is 100,000 videos like this on the Own Nothing site.
So I just got my hospital bill in the mail, and before I had a baby, I always wondered how much it costs to have a baby here in the US. I have pretty good health insurance, but this is the breakdown of my hospital bill. So the first thing was the room where I stayed at after delivery, and that was $17,760. Pharmacy, $55. Medical surgical supplies, $1,323. Non-sterile supplies, $2,437. Sterile supply, $50. Lab work, $1,484. Immunology, $450. Hematology, $1,098. Anesthesia, $615 for that nice epidural. Drugs required, $59. Delivery room, $20,395 for a whopping total. Oh wait, no, I missed it. I don't even know what the heck this is. $5,657, and then for a whopping total of $51,383. This is before insurance, and just as an FYI, There was no complications at all during my birth, natural delivery, no issues whatsoever.
I mean, that's a typical case, right? So imagine if we had 100,000 people sharing those clips and then those clips went viral. Because we see something like this and then everybody's like, yeah, well, that you'd think that's an outlier, right? This must be the most unlucky woman in America. And it turns out that's normal. Once you go, and now that we have the pricing, now that we have the map and the pricing, because the hospitals that do comply are required to post the pricing. So I got the information from public sources. So now you can actually see the information, direct source. And by the way, let's see if maybe they're not providing accurate information. Who knows how well audited it is? Because I also saw even that is spot checked. They're not going and auditing everybody. So even though you're supposed to provide the information, they're very lax on enforcement. So, maybe we'll find that some of the pricing that people are putting in there isn't even accurate. So this is just the starting point. So with healthcare, I realized I don't even need to get into insurance agreements yet. Let's start with the fact that all the drugs that we're taking, once you can sort through in a user-friendly way, are designed to harm you, and they even have labels that you don't even see. And all the liability is shielded. Let's start with that. And let's then go to the fact that hospitals don't provide pricing. And then the ones that do, even when you see how ridiculous the pricing is, you realize this system's a scam. I don't even need to go into a lot of detailed contract analysis to show you that structurally this is broken. Now we'll do the contracts on top of that. I mean, at some point I'll add the, whatever the agreements are with the health plans, and, we can get into PBMs and all of that other stuff. But I want to go for the biggest bang for the buck. My goal is to give people quick surveys where they can figure out where they are with respect to, what's your medical sovereignty picture look like? What does your financial sovereignty picture? Are you an NPC? Let's do this simply and then provide the solutions. This is the most important part. The point of it is, again, it's not to demoralize you, but it's also not to cause you to call your congressman, because what I don't expect is you can't fix this system. And by the way, this is true with startups. This is true with, I've researched this. You don't get to a situation like this and do a turnaround. This is why entrepreneurship is such a great thing. You have startups. Startups are the way to go, not fixing the system. The people that are spending their time fixing the system are wasting their time. We need to create new systems, but we can create new systems very easily. And so that's one of the parts with OSR and why I'm so passionate about that project as an initial one. So, so that's in that area. And then we get into government, right? Again, with the click wrap agreements, when I first wrote the article, based on the research that I could find at the time, it suggested that the average person signs 100 click wrap agreements. And then I dug into it more and actually every app you download on your phone is a click wrap agreement. And so then at the count I've gotten up to is the average American signs 250 click wrap agreements. And it would take, 2 to 3 hours a day, 365 days a year to read those click wrap agreements. So, but I don't even know that it's important to go through that. I think we can go through just very simple categories to show people that they've given away all their rights. You don't even need to know all of the fine detail. You just, you have these 5 things. Here's your cell phone plan. Here's your brokerage agreement. Here's your mortgage agreement. Here's your insurance. Take the stuff that's 80% of people's costs, and then boom, you're going to be able to see a profile. You have basically no sovereignty at all in aggregate across all of these categories. And no one's immune to that. It's not like I don't have 100 score on the sovereignty index. One of the things that I talk about all the time is, they're moving on a tyranny index towards technocracy. And the end state of that is a global digital currency based on energy credits, which Musk talked about again today. This is literally what is being built and pushed, with AI surveillance and a social credit system, all done centrally and now controlled by AI. That's their end game, but they're not getting there all at once. They're moving there in pieces. They're doing a very effective job, by the way, more so in the last 12 months than in the previous 10 years. But they're not getting there all at once. They've been working on this since the 1930s. We're not going to get to 100% sovereignty right away, but we've got to go at it one piece at a time in all of these areas. So what I'm going to show you tonight is, again, as I said, it's beta. I already know myself 100 things that I want to do to make it better, but I want your feedback. And where I've gone with it is to try to make it simple and not time consuming. The other part of it is that I haven't built out fully is the system for people to share content. So, share your medical bill, share your experience with this, share your experience with the cell phone provider, all of these different things. If we aggregated all that content and made it shareable, that would have a big impact. And most people are too afraid to stand up, or maybe they don't think about it, or they don't think that it can have an impact, which isn't surprising, right? I mean, how many of these? I've probably gotten in the last year 5 of these things where it's like, oh, hey, congratulations, fill out this form, you and get your share of a class action lawsuit, right? And so remember the credit agencies did that. All the credit agencies had data breaches and everything else. Well, it's like Verizon, it's like everything. All these big companies, tech companies with centralized databases get hacked. And then if you provide your information and you spend a bunch of time and you wait, you get like $2.33 in the mail. It's a completely useless, broken system with no teeth. So, and you don't have any options. So again, what I don't want to do is, it's like, yes, we could put together these click wrap agreements. You can see how bad the click wrap agreements, and then somebody's like, oh, I'm going to call my congressman. It doesn't matter. You're not going to be able to fix this, because this is done through Congress. This is done through trade organizations and lobbyists that get Congress to write the legislation that allows these to be standard terms. So they're allowed, they get cover to do this. So again, you got to get out of the system. I want to spend a lot of time. This is the weakest area of the site, and one, though, that I want to spend a lot of time because of what's going on with Palantir and what Trump has done with the database of Americans and Operation Stargate. But even just taking Snowden's information, he talks about PRISM and what's involved with data collection with Google, Facebook, Apple, Microsoft, X Keyscore, your entire life online, Stingray, fake cell towers with tracking location information. We're in multiple government databases, and those government databases are now being connected through an executive order, through Trump, through Palantir, and through Doge. And people are celebrating this. Again, this is one of the most amazing propaganda campaigns I've ever seen. All these people, well, gee, Elon really tried. He was trying to make things more efficient. He was not. He's a technocrat. He connected Palantir to all these databases. This is what he wanted. He's pushing for, in speeches at world government summits, that we're going to have a world government, AI is going to control it. He's pushing it. His grandfather was the head of the Technocratic Party. Wake up on Elon Musk. So I'm going to spend a lot more time and try to figure out a way to, I don't know, I guess it's disappointing to me. I read Snowden's book, Permanent Record. I've read all of the stuff that he's put out there, and I try to follow him as much as I can. I mean, he told us this over a decade ago. Where's the outrage? Where's the accountability? The saddest thing for Snowden has to be not that he did what he did, but that no one cares. And it's only gotten worse. It's kind of like, I've played those clips from the Church Committee about the CIA from the 1970s, where, they basically talked about everything from, MK Ultra to the fact that the media is the CIA is installed in the major media, like CBS. They actually have people on the payroll, right? This was the big discovery, and there's these big public hearings. Okay, and did it do anything? Did it stop? Did any of the none of the activity stop? This is why government hearings are a complete waste of time, and thinking government is the solution is a waste of time. Because they can, years later, finally admit to what happened and then not change the policy, or they've figured out a new way around it where they don't even need it. The other thing is, just on a simple basis, do you actually own anything? Software that you used to buy once, are you now renting for with subscriptions? Do you own your car? Do you own your home? Do you own your music? Right? That's a simple analysis of your sovereignty and your ownership of things in general of any asset. So anyway, in the end, all these different dimensions, you're going to have a sovereignty score, but more importantly to a sovereignty score, it's going to list options, ways for you to opt out. So again, it's not write your congressman, not change the law. You're not going to negotiate the ClickWrap agreement with Microsoft. You're not going to send their chief legal counsel a red line and get the agreement changed. That's a waste of time. But once you realize how horrendous these terms are, the worst one was, as I said, several times, there was a doctor who died at a restaurant that was on a Disney property, and Disney tried to use the Disney Plus online service subscription to get out of the contract. That's how broad these contracts are. So in the end, I may come up with an incentive system where you get various points for increasing your sovereignty. I don't know, but may or may not do that. I'm open to suggestions. But what I do want to do, if gamifying it helps, fine. If not, but what I'd like to do is, with all of this, the whole point is for people to do things. Like, my goal in this isn't, I get 100 million people to watch these videos. If 100 million people watch these videos and nobody changes anything, then it will have been a complete waste of time. I want to move this from being a passive situation. I'm putting together these tools to be tools that you can use, as opposed to, listening to me talk about it, which I'll certainly, now that we will have all of these sites, I'll be talking about providing, educational materials and research on why these things are important. But it's all about, at the end of the day, you realizing and recognizing that if you're holding on, if you're sitting out of fear, if you have a job you don't like that's going to get replaced by AI, and you have the job because you think you need health insurance, which is going to provide you with catastrophic coverage, it doesn't provide you catastrophic coverage. And if you're doing all of that because you think you're going to be able to retire based on your retirement funds, you don't own those either. And once you realize that, you'll get to where I am, which is you realize there is nothing left to lose, and you can go all in on the parallel system without having to sit there saying, oh, well, should I buy this basket of stocks? Should I buy this thing? Why would I put any energy towards the thing that's trying to enslave me? I should put all of my energy into the alternative that can help bolster my sovereignty. So this is essentially the concept behind it. Again, I don't know if the incentive thing makes sense or not. Some of it is like, I don't want to put in a big tracking thing for this or even be overly prescriptive. I'm certainly going to recommend things that I actually use, right? I think I've stopping using a personal bank account in 2019. And then as we keep on moving down the curve, I want to make available the things that I use. This is why I've got now this above phone and everything else. But by no means do you have to use the things that I use. But I'm gonna recommend the things that I recommend because I use them. That's essentially you can benefit from the research that I've done. So with that, I'm gonna pop through the site. And I don't even have a bug bounty thing on there yet because I didn't have time to add that. But I will probably do a bug bounty for that, just as we do for OSR. So here'll be another way to earn FreedomDollar or Zano. So for those of you out there, how can I get FreedomDollar and Zano? There's an OSR bug bounty, and we'll probably do one for Technocracy Atlas and Own Nothing. We may do one for Freedom Forge as well. So this is the best way. Put your money where your mouth is, and best way for me to get people into the ecosystem is, hey, I want your feedback, and now you can earn some of this alternative currency for it. So let me share the screen now, and I'm sure we'll discover some bugs as we even go through it. But I'm gonna reduce. There we go. So this is significantly different. If you joined the alpha stage, I've completely reworked this because, again, the center point of this has gone from analyzing basically corporate contracts to see what rights you've been given away to actually see how you've been hijacked across attention, money, health, government, schools, ownership of assets, and then contracts. Contracts now, to me, is the least important. It is important, but it's actually probably not the most impactful thing in way that we've lost our sovereignty and don't realize it. And a lot of it comes from the government. So, Yeah, somebody says, I think you're right about sharing. The sharing stuff is key. Again, I can put together tools, I can put together frameworks, but nothing will be more successful at getting people to change than hearing individual stories from people like them or hearing about it from their friends and their family members, period. So I could do, courses and lectures and everything else. And it's good to do that to put together the platform so that to empower others, but it's in each individual sharing their own story that is how this is successful. So again, these are the now 7 categories: your attention, money, health, government surveillance, school surveillance, ownership erosion, and contract capture. Now, only a couple of these areas are actually built out where there are actually surveys, but this is one where I wanted to give you a flavor for how this works and how I'm trying to structure this to make it easy to understand this information. So I've talked about this quite a bit, which is, I actually attended some of Joe Dispenza's workshops. My wife and I went to a couple of them, a advanced retreat and then a post retreat or whatever, and read a bunch of his books. But he has some interesting perspectives on things. And one thing is that, by the time we're 35, our day is pretty much, tomorrow is going to be about 95% the same as today in terms of the decisions that we make. We're pretty much on autopilot. Everything from, our sleep patterns, what we do, how we brush our teeth, music we listen to, and everything else, things get kind of ossified by this point. It doesn't have to be that way, but this is generally what happens. This is one of the reasons people have midlife crises, because they realize, Jesus, they get in a rut, and some people wake up and some people don't. And those that wake up, it can be the cause of a midlife crisis. But I want to talk about kind of the 5 phases of NPC programming. So the first part of this is from the time you're 0 to 7. So during the first 7 years of life, the brain operates primarily in theta wave states. So the same frequency used in hypnosis. So children absorb information directly into their subconscious without any critical thinking. You don't really have any conscious control over what goes in. This is why, there's belief in imaginary beings and so on and so forth. So this is really the download period where core scripts and fears and behavioral loops are installed. Actually, in an interesting way, there was a series that was put out called 7 Up. This was a BBC show, but it's fascinating. They followed a group of boys and girls from age 7 all the way up to, I think it may even still be going on. I think the last time I checked, it was 84. So every 7 years they would check up and see what happened to these people. And the whole premise was, show me the child and I'll show you the man, or show me the boy and I'll show you the man, show me the girl, I'll show you the woman. And that basically whatever's in there up to age 7 kind of sets the whole framework, which again, doesn't have to be, but you have to realize that these scripts were installed so that you can uninstall them. But this is it. So a lot of the scripts that are installed then are, authority figures are always right. Success means following rules. Your worth comes from external validation. So at this point, looking at it from an NPC perspective, the code injection rate, if you want to call it that, is 100%. Because again, you don't really have any control over it. Phase 2 is when institutional capture begins. So this is where you really start standardizing your response loops. This is from age 7 to 18. So as we discussed earlier, school systems were designed during the industrial era to produce compliant workers, bell schedules, to train responses to external cues, grade condition, external validation seeking. Curriculum determines the boundaries of acceptable knowledge. Social hierarchies are formed. So this is really a period of scheduled behavior training through mandatory participation. You are forced to enroll in this. So you were trained to execute commands on cue, to respond to bells and authorities automatically, like an NPC responding to game triggers. So the scripts that are installed during this period are, the bells determining when to think and stop thinking. Sitting still equals being good. Memorization is certainly highlighted and featured over understanding, which is a massive part of even the whole concept of standardized testing. And so at this point, your code injection rate is 6+ hours a day, 180 days a year for 12 years. So again, first 7 years, you're completely captured. That's just a function of the brain state that you're in. Then you get 6 hours plus a day for 180 days of institutional capture through government schools. Now, of course, there are exceptions if you're not in a government school, but nevertheless, I'm trying to paint the picture of for most people where they are from an attention perspective, which I think is critical. I mean, even more so than contractual capture. If your attention has been hijacked, if you don't even know why you have the beliefs that you do, if you're not conscious to, what you're doing or why you're doing it, and you don't even realize that it was shaped by these sources or that you can do anything about it, then, who cares if you realize about a click wrap agreement? You got bigger issues to attend to. Phase 3 is the broadcast era. So this is where you have mass installing of the same scripts. And I did a podcast on this, I think in 2020. This has actually kind of evolved a bit. Well, we actually did one a few months ago, where originally you had 3 television stations that were pumping out the same thing. So television and radio enabled centralized narrative control. You had a small number of gatekeepers who determined what millions would think, and it turns out a lot of that was even coordinated. The evening news created shared reality, and then you had advertising linked to products that linked product to identity and emotion. So, I mean, at this stage, you really had entertainment normalizing cultural values. And so we essentially, in this country, had a period of time where we had passive reception of curated reality through limited channels. And so for the first time, entire populations could be programmed with the same script simultaneously. NPCs running identical code. 3 networks controlling the whole narrative. News anchors became the trusted authorities. Advertising shaped desire and identity. And I actually talked a lot about the whole propaganda movement and Ed Bernays, and it's actually fascinating to study how truly and intentionally manipulated this all was. They realized that the same tactics that they could use to get people to participate in World War I initially, well, those tactics could be used in non-war time to manipulate people to buy products and to try to shape things in another way. And this is what Bernays was doing, working with advertisers and working within media, was to try to shape the post-war mind of the consumer and to push us to consumerism. And again, it got pushed then into there's like a national defense thing. So we're going to win through capitalism, but we need to use propaganda to basically pump up this consumerism. And so again, I'm not even making this up. This stuff was done much more scientifically. You had psychologists who were employed on Madison Avenue and were employed working within the media as well. And then, we then, later learned that even some of these news anchors were influenced heavily by the government and intelligence. And so at that point, your NPC code injection rate is about 4+ hours per day. And now we move into where we are today, which is the algorithmic age. Now, I left out, there's kind of another stage in this, which is we went from the 3 big networks to cable, but that just became more now you picked your brainwashing based on ideology. So now are you watching Fox News to get that belief system installed, or are you watching MSNBC? But at no point are either of those fair, balanced, or objective. You're getting a particular type of programming. And then we got into the internet, which promised to be free, which was exciting at the very beginning, but then big tech ended up getting captured. And now we know that there's a very substantial censorship industrial complex that directly had intelligence and NGOs and everything else involved in curating information from what we perceived to be free channels. Now it's worse. This is why, again, when Musk says freedom of reach is now they can use algorithms to micro-target the information that you get. So it's not even necessarily at the Fox News channel, but Musk has the ability to flip public perception by 3, 4, 5 or more %, which can actually change the entire outcome of public policy and, culture across the board. And people have sold themselves that this is free speech without any understanding of how the algorithms work and any understanding of exactly how your dopamine levels and your system can be manipulated and hijacked by this. So now we have infinite scroll with no end, notifications that interrupt us constantly, autoplay that removes choice. So now our code injection rate is actually up from the 4 hours during the broadcast era to 7 hours a day, 24-hour days, 24/7 access that's now personalized. And then phase 5 is the invisible frame. This is the hidden frame. And this is the most effective programming of all. The boundaries of acceptable thought define what you cannot think. Manufactured consent creates the illusion of choice. The Overton window determines what's considered reasonable. You don't know what you don't know because you don't know to look for it. So the installation method here is the elimination of alternatives from awareness entirely. So this is the idea that you're only choosing from a pre-selected set of choices, and you don't even know the vastness of what's outside of those choices. So the deepest NPC code isn't what you think, it's what you can't think. It's the invisible walls of your perception. So the scripts installed here: what topics are never discussed, what questions feel dangerous to ask, what ideas seem obviously crazy. And so the code injection rate on this, it completely affects 100% of perceived reality. And this is the truth. I've been in meetings and groups and everything else. People like to talk about, limited hangouts or what is possible to talk about in polite society. This word polite society. Well, that polite society is in essence represents this invisible frame where, you can talk, but only within this, with this scope. If you go outside of that scope, you're going to be an outcast, even within your own social circle. And so we have a pretty narrow frame. I mean, I think the stuff that we talk about here is largely at technocracy is outside of the scope. I mean, I've been in things where, people are talking about some of the things that are going on and examining some of the, horrors that happened in 2020 and beyond. But once you start talking about the Trilateral Commission, once you start talking about technocracy, once you start talking about, even Epstein, look at, Epstein, Trump tried to make Epstein something that, this is a waste of time. This is fake news. This is a hoax. There's nothing to it. How do you get to a point where how is this not a major news factor? And by the way, it's not even just what Epstein did with the sex trafficking. The bigger issue is all of the stuff that Courtney Turner has discussed in terms of what Epstein was behind. Epstein was a big financier of technocracy, whether it's genetic research, whether it's AI, whether it's Bitcoin. But we don't want to talk about that. They want to put together the technocracy atlas. So, now you become tinfoil. There's no tinfoil hat here. But politicians and influential people were blackmailed by various organizations for various purposes. And these people were involved in everything from, you had Stephen Hawking involved with this. How many people from MIT were on Epstein's island? How does this all fit into technocracy? Who's actually pulling the strings here? I'll tell you, knowing that is pretty important to understand who's driving the ship as we move towards a digital prison. But it's not polite to talk about these things. These are not acceptable things. It's acceptable to talk about, a limited range of public policy related matters. Well, I mean, obviously to me, that's absurd. Those are irrelevant things to talk about. unless you understand the motivations and who is pushing this technocracy, none of the rest of it matters. And unless you know it, everything is going to be a surprise to you every day. You'd be like, oh, well, COVID happened. This must be a one-off. Maybe it was just Fauci. If you're not going to then study public health, if you're not going to study the history of these institutions, you're not going to study the funding of it and the interconnection of, these industries with the surveillance state and everything else. If you're not even going to touch that as a topic, you're going to get ostracized for that. This is why we're stuck. And it's very easy for that to become, and by the way, the shadow banning is real. The shadow banning on my account is real. I'm search banned already. Obviously, Musk has demonstrated in his own terms of service that he can determine freedom of reach. And so he'll tell you that now everybody's all excited that the algorithm is supposed to change to give you exactly content tailored to what you want, as determined by who? So it's a lot of power that we've given somebody who is an outward technocrat to be shaping what that algorithm is, to shape what it is that we want, as if he knows what we want. He's providing the invisible frame. And it's wrapped in freedom of speech. It's wrapped in, he's going to fight the EU. He saved free speech. Again, he didn't save free speech. We're 55th. He didn't save anything. Yeah, I'm shadow banned on Rumble too. Yeah, probably because we had Craig on here and we talked about the fact that Rumble's pay to play and that JD Vance and Vivek Ramaswamy and Tether and Howard Lutnick are investors in Rumble. So yeah, of course we're going to be. You can't talk about the current thing. We can litigate what happened 5 years ago, but if you talk about the thing that's happening now and the thing that COVID was a part of in terms of a broader control system, no, you can't talk about that. So anyway, this is the NPC thing. So this is the most important thing. If you're walking around in life and your entire belief system is, your parents told you you were not enough. Your parents told you were always going to be poor. You blah, 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 blah. You had this stuff coming in 0 to 7, and then you got the government indoctrination. And then if you're not aware of it, you've never questioned it, then you're an NPC. And by the way, you can reverse that process. So I'm not saying it in a pejorative sense, but like we're all NPCs to a certain level. So there's a test here. It's like, okay, how many hours do you spend on screens? I'm just going to go through. I'm going to not answer these accurately, but what ratio of your screen time is creative output versus passive consumption? Again, there's a big difference. Are you using the technology or are you sitting passively? This is why I discussed, even with this podcast, my goal is increasingly to get all of this stuff built so that moving into next year, you guys are empowered with this information. You guys are empowered to understand this and start building parallel systems yourself, using some of the tools and technologies that I've learned how to use, but then building your own, creating your own, sharing your own stories with other people. That is you creating, as opposed to, oh yeah, I listened to Joe Rogan on 2X while I was doing 2 other things, and then I forgot what the podcast is, and then I moved on to something else, which is what most of this stuff is. How many notifications do you get on your devices in a given day? How many hours of deep, uninterrupted, focused work do you achieve daily? How much time do you spend offline in nature doing physical activities? Again, I'm just putting random stuff in here to show you the kind of scoring. Reactive scripts. Can you focus on a single task for 30 minutes without checking your phone? How often do you reach for your phone without a specific purpose? Right? Once you start, and then you start thinking about these things, it's like, oh, wow, okay. Am I driving the ship, or is big tech driving the ship? Are these algorithms driving the ship? Which again, if Bernays was being consulted on by Madison Avenue, psychologists are working very closely with big tech as well to explicitly manipulate these systems, your limbic system. When did you last read a book or a long form article from start to finish? I mean, we know that's, I can tell you that's rare. This is part of the reason I haven't been writing as many articles, because I know that many people are going to read long form articles. Of course, I don't know if they're necessarily going to listen to a 5 or 6 hour podcast, but this is why I take the content and put it into different formats. After consuming media, can you usually recall and discuss what was learned. I mean, I know a lot of people watch podcasts, listen to stuff, don't retain any of the information. It's just kind of, it's there. It's a social thing. It's, I listened to the latest Joe Rogan or Lex Friedman, but you listen to it passively and couldn't recount what any of it is. What percentage of your day is spent reacting versus proactively working on your goals? And, COVID was great for that, right? Now everybody works at home, and now you're watching Tiger King and you're doing everything else, and people are wearing their pajamas and everything, so the level of focused intention has been stripped away. And then you weren't allowed to interact with other people. People were covering their faces. A lot of great things happened for the technocrats through that whole dynamic that have not been unwound. They're permanently kind of there. How many of your core beliefs have you consciously chosen versus inherited? This is a big one. This is a tough one. And by the way, there aren't simple solutions to this. This takes a long time, and you may never get to all of it. You don't know what happened those first 7 years, but once you realize some of it, you can strip it away. You can be like, oh, I've just assumed this is an aspect of my personality, like genetically or for whatever. And it's like, no, this is just literally, it's a belief. It's a belief that you weren't conscious of when it was installed, and you can remove it. And when that happens, what's possible opens up in a huge way. How diverse are your information sources? Can you clearly state your top 3 values and how you live them? Do you feel anxiety or FOMO when disconnected from your phone or internet? When you have a strong opinion, can you argue the opposing view effectively? So you go through all that, and here we go. So yeah, I don't even remember what, I got to fix that. That's a good thing. Well, we got a score of 54%. And so this is one of the quizzes. So we're going to do quizzes here in all 7 of these different areas. And then let me log in. And again, I encourage you to look at this, but not necessarily like plan on saving this. I don't even know how well the whole flow works, because this is another one of these. I was working up until the last minute to make changes, and then decided at the end, oh, why don't I just add, 100 other things. So I see we're going to have another one of these debugging things while this is going on. Hold on. Bear with me 1 second. All right, so I will show you at some point here soon. We'll go through some of the rest of the site. I'll show you the dashboard, which is the most important part, which is, the idea is to do some of these assessments so that you can then, once you know things like this, like one of the things that the above phone allows you to do is have much more control over your time. And because it's not a Google phone, you have more control over a whole variety of notifications and other things. It's a very useful device for reclaiming some of that attention. So then we go into the money aspect of this, and there's a money sovereignty test. I'm not going to go through that. I think there are like 18 questions here. But again, if you're listening to this, you probably heard a lot of this, but I will tell you from all of our talks and everything that I've been doing the last couple of years, most people know very little of this, or they may know one piece or another, but they haven't seen how all of the pieces put into place. So Federal Reserve was born in 1913. Currency, detached from gold backing begins. It wasn't, complete at that point. 1933, you had Executive Order 6102, which was FDR ordering Americans to surrender gold at $20.67 an ounce. Then after he did that, gold was repriced to $35 an ounce. And so government stole 40% of citizens' wealth overnight. And the gold confiscation proves to be a precedent for seizure. There were 2 Supreme Court cases related to this that are relevant today. They have upheld the ability to do this. So when I say, or when you read the risk factors in the Bitcoin ETF, and I say, well, they could confiscate your Bitcoin ETF, people are like, oh no, they could never do that. It's like there's already Supreme Court precedents for it. It's already a risk factor in the ETF. So then in 1971, we had the Nixon shock. He closed the gold window. Then dollar became purely fiat backed. And as I mentioned in the intro, the dollar's lost 87% of its purchasing power since. Then in 1994, you had what's called UCC Article 8. UCC is Uniform Commercial Code. This is done at the state level. These were rewritten in all 50 states. Your ownership in financial instruments become security entitlements, a claim subordinate to secured creditors. So in other words, when the economy collapses, if we have another 2008 style situation, your stocks and bonds and portfolios will go to the banks that are securing the broker that's holding on to these things. So this was a very sneaky process that a lot of people don't know about, but it was essentially an entire legal reclassification of property rights. You no longer own securities, you have claims. So you have an IOU on your ETF, you have an IOU on your 401k. Then in 2008, we had Too Big to Fail, which was the $700 billion bailout, which proves that the system protects banks, not people. By the way, and this continued even with the Silicon Valley Bank and the bank failures that we had a couple of years ago. In fact, many people in the administration had ties to Silicon Valley Bank. USDC had ties to Silicon Valley Bank. It was once again bailed out. The FDIC insurance was pretty much completely wiped out during that process. And also during that process, even though I'm talking about 2008 now, I just want to extend the fact, and this builds off of what we talked about last Monday. None of these systems have improved. They've all deteriorated. And it was pretty bad in 2008. So then in 2009, we had hope. Hope emerged in the form of Bitcoin. So Satoshi Nakamoto in 2009 releases the Bitcoin white paper, and people are starting to talk about peer-to-peer electronic cash as a tool for economic freedom. So this was exciting. I was excited about this. And I remember, the infectious way in which Roger Ver talked about it, and the really early energy about, hey, yeah, we're never again on 2008, never again on Too Big to Fail and Moral Hazard and so on and so forth. And finally, money for the entire world and everyone around the world, including the fact that 71% of people make less than $10 a day, will now have a sound money that they can use without third-party intervention. That was the dream. It was hijacked in a variety of ways. And I won't go through all of it, but we now know, I'm going to put Epstein in here as a big part of this now, because he funded the developers during this hijack period, and then also funded the same group that worked on all 3 CBDC pilots. So this started around this time, and then you had the block size wars, which Roger and Steve Patterson wrote about brilliantly in Hijacking Bitcoin. And so throughout this time period, there was a mass campaign of propaganda and censorship to block out any dissenting views on this idea of artificially capping Bitcoin at 1 megabyte and effectively transitioning it permanently from peer-to-peer digital cash to slow, expensive digital gold. This is completely opposite of the enthusiasm from 2009. And this form of Bitcoin doesn't do anything to solve the financial crisis situation that we had in 2008. Then we saw, Canada freezing the truckers' bank accounts. Then we had ETF and institutional capture in 2024 with BlackRock. And so now, again, the great taking applies to Bitcoin ETFs. So now we have Bitcoin ETFs where you have a paper claim on Bitcoin. You never hold a Bitcoin. And the risk factors say they could be confiscated. A whole variety of things could happen. Your financial sovereignty through this has eroded. Somebody says need to improve just from seeing some of the survey questions. Yeah, that's fine. I'm happy to, look at the information. The trade-off with this is like, how long is the survey going to be? The point of it is to open people's minds, and in conjunction with this information, because a lot of people have never thought about any of this. And now we have treasury capture. Now we have Bitcoin treasuries. We have corporations like MicroStrategy accumulating Bitcoin positions with using debt and stock. Now we have regulatory capture. We have the Genius Act. We have the Clarity Act. So now legislation hands stablecoin issuance to banks requiring full KYC AML, creates a complete programmable asset infrastructure. It's a CBDC by another name, but it's also not limited to money. It's the actual tokenization and centralized control of all assets, not just money, stocks, bonds, everything that you can imagine is now under this regulatory capture. And I would argue the great taking is happening now. So you actually marry these things together. So you take the UCC filings and all of the changes that have happened legally behind the scenes that no one was paying any attention to, that are already baked in. These are all of the rules. No one's an exception to this. It's in all 50 states. If you have a brokerage account or whatever, the great taking has been installed. So then now once you tokenize assets, then it means that when there's a financial collapse, it's going to be really easy for your wealth to be completely and totally transferred. So again, the survey is 18 questions so far. Again, I want to balance back and forth. I encourage you guys to play around with it. And again, it's a first draft. So I welcome input, but just understand my goal is to balance. I want it to be long enough that even the questions themselves cause people to think about things that they've never thought about before, but not too long that they give up on it. Because the important part is that we want people to actually get to well, what do you do about this, right? But the point is, if you know you don't own your stocks, your bonds, you don't own your money, you don't own your bank account, you effectively don't own your house, and you don't own your Bitcoin, then sitting around at a job you don't like so that you can protect these assets that you don't even own doesn't make a lot of sense. And so, again, this is where we're going with with a lot of this health. I didn't even the health survey is going to be an even more interesting one. But what I will show you here, and again, this might move to Osara, is I really started out by saying, hey, how do we get these contracts? And then I realized for a lot of healthcare, there isn't a contract. You're just subject to terms. And so what I want to do is I want to take this information, because some of this information is required to be public, but they do a great job of masking it and hiding it. Most people don't know about the warnings that are on these prescription drugs. Then they don't know what are in any of the contracts. The fact that it's publicly available isn't that useful. In fact, this is one of the ways that government goes about, getting captured by the institutions. It's like, well, yes, we made the information available. So there's a government database out there that has all the package inserts. There's government information out there that has the pricing for the hospitals that complied. Are people looking at government databases? Is anybody advertising this? Do the hospitals go out of their way to market? Of course they don't. It's impossible to find most of this information. And so they can now say, well, we published it, right? So the small percentage that actually comply. So if you are interested in this, again, maybe this is a little off of the own nothing thing. We have 11,545 package inserts in a database here. And we also have 1,978 death waivers, 2,303 of the FDA's strongest warning. And there's a consent violation scale that we've come up with this. But it's important for you to know it's not a warning label. A package insert is a legal shield. It's a contract of adhesion that you never see, never sign, and you can't negotiate. By taking the pill, you're legally deemed to have accepted the disclosed risk. This is outrageous. This should be outrageous. Like the fact that we even put up with this, the fact that we feel in any way like we should comply with this system is absurd. And of course, your doctor never tells you these risks. Has your doctor walked through a black box warning or gone through the package inserts? Has anyone ever had that happen? Love to see any comments on that. So you never sign anything. There's no informed consent, but you bear 100% of the risk. So again, I may even change the way the index works. I should probably publish like a white paper, whatever, on all of this. But again, my strategy with all of this is I'm trying to get the stuff out fast and then solicit feedback and make suggestions. So it is intentionally an iterative process. And but anyway, you can see the different warnings: dependency, black box, surveillance, lethal, no consent, mind altering, experimental. So I mean, we can put something here. You can look at some of the worst offenders here. There's dexamethasone elixir, bound to severe liability waivers, including death risk without your signature, report of acute toxicity and or death following overdosage of glucocorticoids are rare, but in the event of overdosage, if you want to, so the chatbot is really the place that you want to go with this. And so if you said, well, okay, what about something like Paxil? So, again, you can type in any drug that you have that you may be on or that you're interested in learning information. But I think it's important that people know this. Paxil, known as paroxetine, is a prescription antidepressant. By taking it, you're deemed to have accepted all disclosed risks, including those outlined in the package insert. However, you never actually signed it. Includes a black box warning, which is essentially a liability waiver for death risk. It states antidepressants increase the risk of suicidal thoughts and behavior in children, adolescents, and young adults in short-term studies. This warning is a clear indication of the severe risk associated with this medication, yet you're bound to it without explicit consent. The consent violation index for Paxil would be high, likely in the range of 80 to 100, indicating consent fraud. This means you're accepting severe liability waivers without ever seeing or signing the agreement. The manufacturer is protected, but you're not. The exact language you're being bound to includes Paxil is contraindicated in patients with a history of hypersensitivity to paroxetine. So yeah, if you have hypersensitivity to it, the drug itself, or any of the inactive ingredients, Paxil should not be used in combination with MAOIs. Additionally, Paxil has a REMS, risk evaluation mitigation strategy program, which requires surveillance due to its potential for abuse and dependence. This means the drug is so dangerous that it requires monitoring, yet you're still bound to its risks without explicit consent. It's essential to understand that the package insert exists to protect the manufacturer, not inform you. By taking Paxil, you're agreeing to these terms without signing anything, surrendering your rights, and accepting all the risks, including death risks, without knowing it. So again, this is a tool that has 11,000 plus drugs in it. And I'm going to continue. So what I'm doing with these, and as I build out these different tabs, I'm going to continue to add information, but I'm going to pick the low-hanging fruit. It's like, okay, well, this is a big area. Obviously, what's another big area? Okay, another big area is hospital transparency. So here is a map of 5,420 hospitals across the United States, and you can see the level of capture here and whether or not they have the pricing information. We may have an issue loading the map. We'll find out. So I just moved this from development to production, so I may actually have some things that I need to adjust, but it does work. What you'll see is a map, and you can zoom in to where you are, and you can see the hospitals in your area and which ones are transparent and which ones are not. And as you'll see, only 15.7% actually publish the required information. Now, how helpful is this? You may not have that many choices where you're located, but what I see the use of this tool being is for people to identify, hey, I never thought about this before. I didn't know they didn't publish the prices. And then all of a sudden we get people to start doing like the woman did with her pregnancy, to publish her bill. And that's one way to force transparency in pricing. Now, I think, again, even if they become transparent, even the ones that are transparent, when you see how much it costs, it's still a ripoff. It's not like the hospitals that disclose pricing are necessarily even cheaper, because what are you going to do with it? You don't have a lot of comparative options here. So, sorry, I'm going to pop a window down here so I can work on debugging this live again. So, all right. All right, hospital. So we'll see how much of this we can get done in the background. So I will do I'll do an overall survey on healthcare, which is going to be an interesting one when you try to encompass prescription drugs, insurance, hospitals, and everything else. But I mean, and then you talk about Medicare and Medicaid, but no one going through a very simple survey is going to think that they have any sovereignty whatsoever in the medical system, because you don't. It's probably the most absurd of any of these categories, because it's truly something that you are legally bound to these things without any contract. And the government is the largest purchaser of these things. And so 47% of all healthcare costs are Medicare, Medicaid, and the VA. So this is a system a lot of people are captured in, or at least think that they're captured in. So while that's going, let me see if this probably won't work either. Maybe it does. So you can compare pricing. So basically all of the hospitals that do publish pricing, there's an ability to compare pricing. So I'm again, for the states, my state of New Hampshire has no transparent pricing. So I actually can't even, I'm not allowed to find out any of this information. But let's say I'm in Connecticut and I'm looking at an abdominal CT scan. Now I can see, all right, well, there's one hospital, Natchaug Hospital, which offers a $769 cash price. There's a $2,403 gross fee. The insurance low is $481. Insurance high is $3,365. I want you to understand. I want you to think about that for a second. I actually I was on Courtney Turner's podcast. The podcast won't be live until January, but she's like, well, I have to, somebody may have to be on certain prescriptions. And so does this work for everyone? So I want to put together tools where you can actually input your own premiums, and then you can actually see something like, okay, with everything that you have to pay, with all of your deductibles and everything else, what is the price at which insurance makes absolutely no sense? And what you're going to find is what we're going to embed within this is not only your ability to see the hospital pricing, but you're going to be able to see the medical tourism pricing. So this is quite an effort, by the way, to try to get all of this information and lay it out properly and make sure that we're comparing apples to apples. But I want people to be able to realize, hey, I can't even get pricing, but if I could get pricing, here's how much it is. Here's how much I'm getting ripped off with insurance versus paying cash. And then here's what this costs relative to doing medical tourism. Again, this is how markets should work. The fact that we can't even get this information for 85% of hospitals is absurd. But again, what you will see here is when you get the information, so we already have embedded it to a certain degree. So you want to pay 74% less. Here's the US average, $769. Here's how much it costs for medical tourism. So we are going to tightly integrate all of the pricing information from OSARA with this so that you're going to be able to see it. And then I'm going to provide tools that, again, are personalized. There's like layers to the development of this. The first layer is, all right, I got to get generic information so that we can get a high level of understanding of what's going on, and then figure out ways of, presenting that and making the tools sortable, and then layering on all of the different alternatives. But I want to do this with healthcare, money, everything else, so that, again, the point of all of this is, yes, you own nothing. You have nothing to lose. The more people that get to that point, the faster we build parallel systems and the faster we stop this technocracy. But the critical piece of this is to have the alternatives. So having OSARA, and it's not going to be just OSARA. This isn't just me promoting the things I'm building. I'm building these things because there's this gap, but I'm going to be bringing in whatever alternatives exist to empower people to make their own decisions. And you will find in every one of these categories, you're getting ripped off in ways that you couldn't possibly imagine. That's actually kind of unfathomable. So again, I might put this in OSARA and then just on Own Nothing have a more basic information, kind of like an outline, because what is missing here is the history of insurance, the history of these things, kind of like what we have with the financial part where we talk about the Federal Reserve and the laws and everything else. I'm going to map all of that out, but that's a more time consuming. So it's something that will get done and needs to get done. But for right now, I wanted to get this information out there and make it available. And hopefully this is a helpful tool. Again, I will put up a bounty program and a place for you to record your feedback, because I really do want your feedback. So if you're looking at something I wouldn't be surprised if some glaringly obvious things are missing. I mean, I'm spending about 14 hours a day doing nothing but working on these 6 different sites. And so, the possibility of the probability of me getting all of this stuff, right or even really good out of the gate is low. So I acknowledge that. So then we have government. This is an area that needs a lot of work. So far, this just kind of gives a high level summary of, this is just really even the Snowden stuff about PRISM and XKeyscore. XKeyscore is a real-time search and analysis of global internet data. So analysts can search everything in one kind of chat. So one kind of interface. So emails, online chat, browsing history. They can pick your, location and get everything about you that way as well. And again, this has been known since 2008. This information, you have a program called Muscular, which is tapped into internal data links between Google and Yahoo data centers, all of these other things. And so, the Patriot Act in 2001. Then you had FISA Section 702, which allowed wireless surveillance of foreign targets, including incidental, quote, collection of American communications. And then you have the USA Freedom Act and so forth. So I'm gonna build this out. This is weak because, and it's one of the things that I've been struggling just to understand the depths of what's going on with Operation Stargate and this American database. So there's a lot of recent information that has to be pulled into this as well, that I think we're going to find is probably worse even than the Snowden data, because of the fact that we're now going to be marrying, it's one thing to analyze social media traffic and everything else. If you're now taking government databases on people, and you're taking healthcare databases, and you're marrying it with DHS information and tax information, and then you're adding AI on top of that, then again, we have no kind of sovereignty at all with respect to our surveillance. So if you use any major technology service, your data is likely in a government database: emails, messages, calls, location, searches, files, and more. So again, this is just for this page. The dashboard, which I hope I can pull up, is where you're going to be able to kind of take the quizzes, see your results, and then you're going to be able to get a list of things that you can do to improve your sovereignty score. The whole point on this is to be a solutions focused program. It is, but like I said, it's beta, it's weak now. But if you did watch the alpha version of this, hopefully you appreciate that this is completely more comprehensive, and at the same time it'll be less time consuming to use. It's going to be easier to do a couple of these surveys than it is to try to log and index all of the contracts. Like, who's going to go through and categorize the 250 plus online click wrap agreements that they sign? So we'll go into detail and provide information about surveillance vendors. We talked about this a couple of episodes ago. And in fact, we wrote a book, Panopticon in the Classroom, or something like this, about what's going on in classrooms since 9/11. It's horrifying. And Rich J was, if he's listening, he was on, and he's like, hey, what's going on in classrooms since we were in school? And I hadn't really thought about it. And it's horrifying. So you have these things like Gaggle monitors student emails, documents, and online activities for safety threats using AI. Something called Go Guardian, real-time screen monitoring, web filtering, and student safety alerts. Bark, AI monitoring of texts, emails, and 30-plus social media platforms. Securely, web filtering and AI-based wellness monitoring across all student activity. Lightspeed Systems, which does device management, content filtering, and classroom monitoring tools. Hapara, Google Workspace monitoring. Teachers can view student screens in real time. So, the process here is the student uses a school device, there's monitoring software, then there's a vendor cloud, and then there's school administration. And then where does the data go from there? Well, if it's anything like healthcare or anything else, the agreements underlying all of this don't actually protect privacy. Or there's a way where it's like, well, they can share de-anonymized information to begin with, but a couple of this agreement here, this agreement there, and then all of a sudden somebody's got a database of all of this information. I mean, there's even surveillance cameras in schools, Xbox using the camera to detect the emotional state of children. It's absolutely insane what's going on with this. So I'm going to build this out in a pretty substantial way, and I think parents should be aware of this. They should also be aware of the ability of a school to detain your child under various, emergency measures. If they think that there's an emotional issue or a threat, some kind of a security threat, they have the ability to detain your child without your consent. This gets really, really bad. And again, with all of this is kind of an afterthought. I built out the money one, I built out the attention one, but these are like, oh, hey, we've got to get into this area. I've got some high level information. I'm going to spend a lot of time researching and building this out. And it's not good news. I mean, the real incidents on this too. Student researching symptoms, gets a police visit. You have LGBTQ students outed to parents, private journal entries flagged. And again, what can people do about it? Obviously, I've always advocated for getting your kids out of government schools. It's what do you own? You own nothing. Simple quiz. Do you own your home? Do you own your car? Do you own your movies or music? Do you own your software, your phone, your data? I mean, this is a very, very basic kind of survey, but basically, once again, how many people have thought about this? Because this has been a gradual transition over the last couple of decades, and people don't think about the fact that they literally don't own anything anymore. And then when you read what the contracts are related to this, even what your renting of it is, you can see how very quickly this couldn't become dystopian. I mean, even within X building a everything app, when you look at everything from what's used, the Israeli company that's used to do identity management to validate who you are, to the algorithms and the contract regarding freedom of reach and how all of that works, and then the information that is shared with advertisers. And now we have X payments coming on, which is fully integrated with KYC, AML, and all of that other stuff, which they're going to be launching it. I guess they've launched it internally, but I took a look at the job descriptions that they were hiring for, and it's really big on KYC, AML, and it's big on compliance. So this is, if you are naive enough, if you bought that Elon is free speech and you somehow think that you're going to have private money, you're not. So disabuse yourself of that right now. So again, a lot of the work to be done here is to take all of this information, build all these databases, but then create really easy tools, surveys, and then tools where, okay, here's generally how bad it is, but then now here's a way for you to do your own calculations and see what the impact of all of this is on your own. So again, freedomforge.io is going to end up being, as I'm building this out, so the idea is Own Nothing is a platform that allows you to understand that you truly own nothing and provide educational materials and everything else. And then Freedom Forge is going to have a lot of educational content, particularly in the area of privacy coins and privacy tokenization solutions. It's going to have new educational materials for onboarding, and Technocracy Atlas you can think of as a tool to use if you want to go to the deeper level and understand who's behind this. If you want to understand who's controlling the money, who's controlling health and everything else, Technocracy Atlas is really a tool for crowdsourcing that kind of information. So in the end, and then of course OSR is an actual parallel solutions. So in the end, all of these sites are gonna link together. They're all gonna have the very specific purpose, but they're integrated in a way to provide value, to empower you. We're gonna have the contract scanner. I don't even know to what degree. I'm gonna decide how much effort to even put into this, because once you learn that the standardized terms are the same for a category of thing, whether it's cell service or health insurance and everything else, once you understand that these things have standardized terms that have been pushed by industry, you really don't even need to go much into the individual contracts because the variation doesn't matter. The standard terms are bad enough. So you're not going to get, one player is not going to one up the other on the contractual terms. Contractual terms are going to be pretty much the same. So this will need to be built out in a big way. I want to figure out the interface to empower people to share their stories across all of this, right? So it's like, okay, share your hospital billing situation. Share your issue with a prescription drug. You took a prescription drug thinking one thing, and then you find out this is the package insert. Right? How many people can have those stories to share? I know a lot of people have those stories to share from 2020, but it is not even just, this is not a recent thing. This has been a persistent thing. This isn't new. People can share their stories about their kids' information. And I mean, those stories are going to be really powerful. And I think, again, most parents probably aren't even aware of it. How many of those stories need to get out there before people start recognize? I mean, I don't know. Look, if people aren't going to take the Epstein thing seriously, I guess my hope is that these stories are going to help. But like, look at how many victims there were in the Epstein thing, and then they suppressed that, and they didn't even want the victims to speak. They made this a whole thing. We have the government protects the public from whistleblowers on behalf of corporations and itself. That's effectively what the new role of government has become. There's no reason we should tolerate any of this, and it won't take very many people standing up. So I need to build this interface in a way where it's really easy to use. It's easy for people to share the information that's viral, but it also has to be censorship resistant, which is why I'm using IPFS so that people can share their stories here. There were so many vaccine injury groups on like Facebook and social media channels that were just completely shut down. I mean, think about that. What kind of free speech? I mean, I guess this is why we rank right up there with Gambia at 55th. Our social media platforms prevent people from sharing their own real stories about having medical issues of any kind. So, we need a platform. We need to make it so that people can speak up, and that if they speak up, it's not going to be shut down, because this is why people get gun shy. But anyway, that's coming. Still no dashboard, which is unfortunate, because this is the important part to show. So anyway, so this is the high level overview. The important part is the dashboard. Hopefully it'll pop up here soon, but if not, anyway, I'm happy to take questions and invite anyone to come up for the Q&A. And again, I'm looking for any kind of feedback on this, any of the sites, anything that's going on. You can come in and talk about anything, but certainly look forward to getting your feedback on this and how this might be helpful, or how it can be made to be more helpful to you, to help empower you to take your sovereignty back. And I had a very frenetic day, so I have not emailed this link for the Q&A to anyone. So let me do that now, behind the scenes, while this is all going on. I actually have a whole soundtrack that I created. I have the one song that I played at the beginning, but I actually have 10 songs that I think are all good. So I'm going to post those at theaarondayshow.com related to this topic. I think that I think maybe the songs are going to be an effective way to help wake people up. But again, what I worry about is I look at what's going on in they're protesting in the UK, and we're doing nothing. Like what kind of protests are going on here? Like, we have more tracking and more centralized control and technocracy happening here at a faster rate than anywhere. And there's no protest anywhere that I'm aware of. So anyway, we'll see what happens. Let me share a couple more of these links. I do realize that there are a lot of people that are just listening to this and not watching it. So I'm trying to be careful to at least explain these things in a way where if you are just listening and not able to see, that you get some value out of it as well. So let me. How are we doing time? Oh, well, I guess 2.5 hours in. All right. Well, this was not short. I didn't realize it went that long. Well, if you're still here, grateful for that. I'll go back and while we're waiting to see if anyone hops in, I see there's a lot of comments here. Let me go back to the top. We also check the aarondayshow.com. Need to get excuse me, those comments integrated at some point, which unfortunately they don't make it easy. All right, we got enjoying theme songs. Yeah, I'd love your opinion on the music too. I enjoy doing the music, and I have iterated the process. I'll show you this when I do the AI episode, all of the tools that I've worked on to create this content. And it's getting more sophisticated for producing these songs and then turning the songs into music videos. So every time there's a new song, I mean, the songs won't necessarily get better. Some weeks I actually try and there isn't a new song because I'm not able to come up with something that's worth listening to. But the music videos should get much more sophisticated because of the algorithms that I'm putting in place to go through the construction process of designing the theme, designing the layout, and then figuring out how each of the segments are going to work, and then how they're going to work together, and then the different models that I use to style and put all together. That gets faster and it gets better because every week there's a new model that comes out that makes it better. But I'd love to know which songs you guys like, and I'm going to get the videos up on the site for the Aaron Day Show, and then you can rate and you can like the song. So this is good feedback as well. I like playing with different types of music. Often I get inspired by a particular thing related. It's when I was doing the Confidential Layer thing, they did that 1984 themed commercial, if you want to call it that. And so I wanted to do a song that was kind of similar time. In fact, kind of based on Eurythmics, who worked on the movie soundtrack, Annie Lennox and Eurythmics. So tried to get that vibe. And so I'm trying to get different genres of music. And honestly, I haven't even uploaded the music videos to YouTube, and I haven't put any of this stuff out on TikTok or Instagram. That's on my list. I'm trying to automate all of these tools to make it easy, because there's a lot of time that goes into just posting these things. And so my goal by, also January is to get all of that automated so that I'm spending more time working on the sites and creating new content, creating new tools, getting feedback from folks. So really do want your input on all of this, because I am building this to help people. And that sounds obvious, but I've actually found in crypto there hasn't been a lot of like user testing or user feedback. People just create build fast and never look back. So I'm seeing Sylvia says, my daughter got $6.38 from a big Facebook lawsuit. Yeah, man. Civil class action lawsuits are a scam. I was in New Mexico working on I got briefly involved in clean energy and then got out of it when I saw how heavily involved the government was in it. But, talk to a class action lawyer who was one of the big investors in this company. I mean, the lawyers make huge money. I mean, class action lawyers and law firms make just massive amounts of money. So, your daughter got $6.38, but the lawyer probably got $150 million. And it's kind of, this is another part of the racket that you find with insurance and everything else. Like it gets to the point where they've got generally accepted processes for doing things. And this is why companies engage in the activities that they do, because they know they're going to end up with a class action lawsuit, and they know about what the settlement's going to be, and they just factor it in as a cost of doing business. And then they actually pass those costs on to the consumer. There's no real punitive effect of most of these class action lawsuits. Is just factored in. So did the $6.38 that your daughter get, did it change her life in any way? And did the settlement cause Facebook to change their behavior? Of course not. I'm sure whatever it is that they did related to that settlement, they just found another workaround. So put all of our energy in parallel systems. So I agree with this. Hopefully I can get this dashboard page working. Let me see in the map also. All right. So got nothing on that. Let me see. See if we got our map working. There we go. All right. Well, at least we're making some progress. So we now have the map. Let me bear with me here 1 second. Just trying to debug this other thing. So yeah, you can drill down. So let's see what's going on in New Hampshire. So in New Hampshire, you have transparent, which are the ones where you actually have pricing, and then you have different levels of opaque, captured, and predatory. I'm going to work on defining these criteria, because there are more things that we can add to these maps. There's more information that we can layer on about hospitals than just price transparency. So the key is to try to figure out how to do this. I mean, I know there's a hospital here in New Hampshire where they were covering up. The Boston Globe did a expose on this. They were covering up the fact that they had a heart surgeon that had just a horrible track record of deaths and injuries, and the information had been covered up for a long time. In fact, hospitals are if you notice this, a lot of hospitals have as their CEO lawyers. And so much about being in a hospital is about concealing information. And it's all built around a lack of transparency, because they don't want their actual liability to be exposed. So there's no incentive in the process for them to be transparent. So you're getting garbage data, and then you're getting a whole bunch of lawyers that are going out of their way, even when they have a settlement. So often when there is some kind of a malpractice, I mean, I laugh about that. I mean, it's the second leading cause of death in the country. So I guess this is not like a minor incident, but usually non-disclosure agreements are part of the deal. So we're, they settle, and part of the settlement is buying silence. So I'm looking here, and because I'm wearing my red glasses, I can't tell if this is predatory. Okay, Monadnock Hospital is captured. So let's see if I zoom out. Let me see what the transparent hospitals. Let me sort by transparent hospitals. There's one, right? York Hospital, that's in Maine. We have Concord Hospital in Laconia, Huggins Hospital in Wolfboro. Those two are transparent. Let's see which ones are predatory. Let's go the other direction. So we have Portsmouth Regional Hospital is predatory. Then right over the border, Holy Family Hospital. So anyway, so this should be some good information for you personally. I mean, this is why all of this stuff, you know, seeing overall statistics doesn't matter. The question is, what are things like in your area? And so what should be helpful for you is the ability in your area to see if you do have choices, if you're in an area where it's not too rural, where, you know, you don't have a choice one way or the other, it's at least one nice step to find out which hospitals provide pricing and which ones don't. That's a good starting point. So that's one way that you can use this tool. See here. All right, go back to the chat. Home educated our daughters. NPC, non-player character. It's a kind of a video game term where if you're in a video game and you're interacting with other characters, they're not actually played by other players. It's something that's just programmed in, and it's programmed to have a very certain set of behaviors and to react a certain way. That's what the NPC is all about. And it's a popular gaming term, but it's really extended into the general population. So if you've ever seen these memes with like a gray character or whatever that actually look like the PBS logo, that's a good representation of a non-player character. So, you know, people will talk about this. Well, this person's an NPC. This person doesn't have any of their own thoughts. They're not driving any of their own decisions. And so, yeah, I wanted to try to put a survey together to kind of quantify that. And again, it's not to be pejorative. We're all NPCs at some level. The question is, at what level are we in control of our own life, and at what level are we aware of it? Are we aware of the programming when we were a kid? Are we aware of the impact of government schools? What are we doing with our lives? I would, and you know, again, as the surveys are developed and integrated, and then as I can show, hopefully the dashboard, this will make more sense. So it's just kind of an ability for you to get a survey of how you've been captured across the board by these different systems, and then with links to address it and to do something about it. I mean, something as simple as, you know, again, using a phone and monitoring your own time, figuring out whether, you know, are you watching things passively? I'm sure there are a lot of methodologies for doing this. So I don't know that I'm necessarily going to invent the wheel. Rather, I might just come up with ways of introducing people to other tools to do this. But are you doing what you want with your life? Do you like your job? How did you get to do your job? Have you ever taken a step back and said, how did I get here? If you compared, you know, I guess when somebody says, what did you want to be when you grow up? That was actually a function of your programming from 0 to 7. So that's not necessarily, you know, your variance from what was programmed into you when you had no conscious filtering to where you came out isn't necessarily the right comparison. The right comparison is that it's not that anything is possible, but there's a lot possible. There's nearly anything possible. There's infinite possibility compared to what we've been pigeonholed to think is possible. So for instance, we've been taught to think we have to have health insurance in order to protect from catastrophic healthcare costs, which it turns out it doesn't do. And then we've been further thought in this concept of, you know, maybe an invisible frame. The only choice that I have is an HMO, or am I using a high deductible health plan? But we think that that's all that's available. And most of our lives have been shaped into these choices, manufactured choices, Coke versus Pepsi. when in reality, there's an infinite possibility of different things out there. So people don't even know about medical tourism. People have never thought about the fact that, hey, maybe my doctor doesn't actually know anything about my health because they haven't been trained on it. They don't have any incentives on it. Maybe I shouldn't, maybe the whole check if this is right, check with your doctor if this is right for you. Maybe why should I even check with my doctor? Why have I given my medical sovereignty to my doctor? Is that even a good idea? We think that because they have a lot of education. What if their education's indoctrination funded by pharma companies? What does that have to do with my health? And once you realize that you can take control of your own decisions in your own life, that it applies everywhere. It's not just healthcare. It's, I don't have to use the dollar. I don't have to use insurance. I don't have to send my kids to government school. And especially, now, with AI and various tools, and again, AI could be horrible in certain ways and not in others. I mean, what Mike Adams is showing, what I'm trying to show with some of these tools is that, and I do agree with Musk on this. Musk even said college is not, if you want to learn something, the information is available there in a variety of different formats. You don't have to go to college to learn something. If you're interested in something, it's available. And so it's not necessarily even a decision of, well, can I afford to not send my kid to government schools? I don't think you can afford to send your kids to government schools. And there are enough educational options out there. I just saw something yesterday. I'm not endorsing this yet because I haven't looked at it, but Jordan Page, who's a great liberty activist who wrote the song Free Ross, wrote and performed the song Free Ross. He just sent me a link, and he just launched something called firefly.edu. Let me pull this up. So again, I'm not endorsing this. I haven't used it. fireflyedu.org. So let me make sure you guys are actually seeing this. All right. So here's the concept behind this. Firefly is your one-stop shop homeschooling solution. Parents and teachers can use AI to create custom courses with Firefly Chalkboard or build them from scratch with our course builder. International audiences can access course content with Firefly Translate Plus, which enables dynamic language sync. Parents, students, and teachers can all talk to Freddie, our friendly AI Firefly, in the lower right corner of any page. So, you can see the courses that they have here, and you learn a little about the philosophy. He's been a big homeschooler, has a big family. He's out on the West Coast and is part of a big community working on all of this stuff. So I'm showing you this just to say that these are the kind of tools that are going to increasingly become available. I mean, these are absolutely going to crop out of nowhere. So you're going to be able to find an educational modality and type of coursework. I know that in this case, I don't know if this is fully Christian oriented. I know that there's probably a part to that. I mean, even blockchain adventures for kids, wonderful whales, so on and so forth. But my point is there are going to be a lot of these things out there. There are probably a lot of these things out there. So once you start knowing that these things exist, again, you don't have to use insurance. You can use medical tourism. You don't have to send your kids to government school. And it's not that the only option to that is to spend $50,000 to send your kids to a private school that is essentially going to be just teaching them the same indoctrination. The only benefit is the social network that they're going to get. They would have you believe that those are the only choices, that it's, expensive private school or public school. Increasingly, obviously, homeschooling is becoming, and COVID helped ramp that up, but even that, can become problematic. And, do parents have the time or the knowledge to teach their kids on this? But now it's going to become about shopping around for different programs and different online resources. And so there's no reason that somebody should be stuck in keeping their kids in in government schools. And so you can take this approach for everything. Again, so many people are shocked. Oh, you don't use a personal bank account. You don't have to use the dollar. And a lot of people are like, oh, that sounds extreme. It's like, look, the dollar is the root cause of all of this. Fiat currency is the control system for technocracy because it already has digital controls, and now it's moving towards programmability, and then that's tied to other programmable assets. So you're not going to stop the tyranny by using that system. And by the way, it's a system that's never succeeded. It has a 100% failure rate. So anyway, you can start thinking about a lot of things doing this. Rachel Huck says, I love my job producing videos. I'm lucky. Well, that's great. That's exciting. There are a lot of people. I think most people don't like their jobs, but if you do like your job, then that's great. But if you don't, then it's probably a good time to start thinking about what it is that you want to do, and to actually weigh that against what's going on with AI and everything else. Because if you're sitting there out of fear and you're like, oh, well, I don't want to lose my insurance. Well, once you understand your insurance won't protect you in the case of a catastrophic condition, and the healthcare services that you're buying with your insurance are inferior to what's available in other places. But it takes a lot. It's kind of like that, that clip that I played at the beginning is an important clip because, the Jeff Daniels clip, because we aren't the first. There are a lot of people that really believe that we have the best healthcare in the world, that we have the freest speech in the world, that we are the most advanced in technology. That still persists. This is a common thing. I mean, and Trump pushes this a lot. I mean, I almost wonder if he's just unaware of what's going on. I mean, is this just a case of he literally doesn't know, or he's but the tariff thing was always a bad idea. I had argued that I think in part what happened with COVID was an extension of the fact, if you remember, before COVID, we were beginning trade wars and tariffs and all that other stuff. I argue that COVID might have been an extension of that was the first, extension of war. War isn't going to be, troops lining up and fighting each other like it was in the past. There are different types of warfare now. I think it's possible that COVID was an extension of that. It was an extension of the trade wars that were brewing. The tariffs have been horrible because we're not that important to China, as important as Trump makes it out to be, and they're not as reliant on our technology as he wants to make you believe. So the more people know this, then again, my hope is with these tools and with awareness and people just researching the facts, the most important thing to do is realize that you have nothing to lose. Because what keeps people stuck, what keeps people sitting around saying, well, which stock should I invest in? Which health plan should I get, or whatever. This is that hidden layer that was being discussed on the attention hijacking side of this, where people are like, which of these bad choices that have been manufactured for me is going to keep me safe? And the truth is that the selections and the choices that you have are losing options around, and they're designed to keep you captive. They're not designed to be actual choices that you benefit from one way or the other. They're essentially the same choice. All right, let me see what other comments we have here. Let me go back up. For my pregnancies, I had pricing by contracting with midwife group that had hospital privileges with hospital costs included, cheaper without insurance. But I figured it out with my third baby. So this is a smart group. We need to get more people in here that don't know what's going on. I mean, these are probably our friends and family need to start listening to this stuff. So hopefully these tools, I think people will use the tools or find out about the tools when they hear about the stories. I think that's probably going to be what happens. But I think that the healthcare thing may be the biggest wake-up call because of what's going on in Congress, and the fact that the government shutdown was largely about this, and they still haven't resolved it. And then people are having to make decisions between food and paying the mortgage and paying the additional insurance that they don't use. And so out of actual necessity, a lot of people are starting to opt out of the system and at least question it more, because a lot of people are looking at this and saying, yeah, I mean, I can't afford this. And I'm not getting anything out of it. I never even use my deductible. And so why am I just paying all of this extra money when I'm worried about even now being able to pay my mortgage? So I think healthcare could be an opening point, but the way to get people to think about it is by getting people to share their bills, by getting people to share their stories. With as many people dying because of medical error every year, again, we hear about that as a statistic, but why aren't the personal stories being shared? When you hear about it on the news, most of the time you hear about it as a statistic, and the statistic's not going to motivate people. Somebody hearing about a personal experience from someone they know or that's in a similar situation, that's going to cause people to move. So I definitely am going to be spending a lot of time and look forward to some input on this. But the tools, unlike with most websites, most people design websites and the purpose is to keep you there as long as possible. And I'm actually trying to do the opposite of this. My goal is, how can I make the explanations easier? How can I make the quizzes shorter? How can I make it fast for you to share your own story and to share other people's stories? And how can we use this to launch off to tools that will help educate you on parallel solutions, whether it's existing solutions or even introducing you, in the case of Freedom Forge, to how you might work with others to create your own parallel solution if it doesn't already exist. And by the way, a lot of people are like, well, I don't know how I'm going to make money outside of the existing system. There are a lot of parallel systems that need to be made. I wish that the healthcare thing, I'm grateful that there are as many of these medical tourism sites as there are, but it's still a very small percentage of people using these things. And then, as I said, the other tools that I'm going to introduce are tools to help you use your own genetic information and health information to interact with other AI that's not big tech AI, to start taking control of your own health so that you don't even need a doctor. 70 to 80% of healthcare costs in this country are avoidable. There are chronic conditions that are caused, I argue, by following public health advice over the last decades. That's actually caused a big percentage of these chronic conditions. And so that's actually addressing the root of it. Medical tourism is just a substitute for the horrible care that you get when you followed public health advice, but then giving people options, unlimited options, right? Because I'm not like, hey, push this thing. It's like, all right, well, here's Mike Adams AI. Here are different AIs. I think I mentioned one of the things that I'm doing is in addition to being able to use kind of a chatbot to get text responses back, you can actually pull up the video clips or images. It's going to be a multimodal approach. And so it's like, I like Dr. Berg. It'd be great to be able to pull up the specific clips if I have a concern about vitamin D or this particular thing, to not only get the text response back, but then have it take me directly to the clip. So I pick which kind of experts that I want to use that may or may not be medical doctors, put that information, store that information on my device, and then I can chat with it. But I'm interfacing my own genetic information with that information, but I'm doing it in a way that's private, where I'm not sharing the information, because the people I don't want to have the information are the government and health insurance companies in the existing medical complex. That's who I don't want to have the information. And HIPAA doesn't prevent that. HIPAA enables that. And so anyway, more to come on that. Watch Craig Winkowitz and join AMAC. What's AMAC? If you're still there, Rachel, we're just looking for what AMAC is. I sent a link to, it might be, I didn't give him a lot of notice, but I sent Craig a note. Craig, if you're listening, if you want to hop on, let me make sure I actually sent you an invitation. I know one time I didn't. I sent him the link to the podcast, not the chat. So let's see. I know a little of the occult world, but I've been hearing about and learning some. It's a side of technocracy and AI that seems to fit. Yeah, the occult is an interesting thing. I've got a database of information on that too that I'm putting into a separate thing. It'd be interesting to try to mine that and see what all of that has to say. I mean, occult means hidden, so there's a lot of hidden knowledge. There are a lot of explanations for why it's hidden. I mean, at various points in time when you could be killed for possessing certain information or sharing certain ideas, then certain information had to be hidden. But was it for nefarious purposes or not? In any event, there is a lot of alternative information out there that would be pretty interesting to take a look at. All right, well, let me check in. It doesn't seem like we have. I'll send out the link one more time. No chat. It's no live chat, which is perfectly fine. We've had a lot of comments online. So here is the live link if you want to join the Q&A. So I'm putting that out there. We'll wait another 10 minutes or so, see if anybody hops on. If not, that's fine. I could use the rest, to be honest. Let me see if we're making any progress on the no progress on the dashboard yet. Let me see here. All right, we'll give this one more shot. So again, early feedback is good. This one is rough because I completely restructured it and went a completely different direction than I had planned originally, which I do like the new direction, but it's covering so much more. Oh, it's an alternative to AARP. Okay. So yeah, so we'll map out a whole bunch of alternatives and build out the solution set. So I want this to be, again, 2026 has to be the year of less talk and more people taking action, direct action. And we have to get to a point where we built tools that can scale, because we're going to get inevitably into an emergency situation, which is when this is how we got here. We got here one emergency at a time, right? And whether it's the Patriot Act or what happened with the CARES Act, or every time there's an emergency of any kind, we end up getting more surveillance and a greater tightening over the surveillance of the financial system. This is, financial system from our perspective. Our assets are, our ownership of our assets is decreased, and the tracking by centralized parties is increased. Bankers remain unaffected. Politicians remain unaffected. And it's never gone the other way. I haven't found since 1970 a period of time or a situation where we've actually either reversed course or actually gained any freedom in these areas. And so the stage is being set. Once they get, something like Stargate in, once Palantir's connected and created the database of Americans and married together the Department of Homeland Security data with IRS data and connected all of this stuff, then we're in a difficult position. It becomes difficult once you have digital ID, and now you always have a choice, but they'll make you think you don't have a choice, that your choice is going to be, well, you won't have any health care if you don't do this. They're already doing this where they're saying, if you don't have real ID, you're going to have to pay $45 each way for airfare. And so they're doing this, one piece at a time. but the goal for Real ID is to be digital is 2027. So this is we have very little time to build these things. And it's not that we need to have a whole bunch of people on them. We don't have to be like critical mass with millions of people using these things next year, but we have to have the solutions built that can scale and can handle a lot of people. So we need to have alternatives for food. We need to have alternatives for money and the ability to engage in trade of all kinds outside of the existing system. That's why I put that one first. And I think FreedomDollar and Confidential Layer and Zeno are the reason that's a big solution is that because of Confidential Layer, we can take $2 trillion worth of purchasing power and make it private and spendable. So it's not like hey, here's a startup idea. We've got to wait for it to get critical mass so that people can actually start using this to engage in trade. There's already $2 trillion plus in purchasing power available. And I think FreedomDollar solves a big piece of the problem for people that, again, things are still priced in dollars. That may go away at some point. It's not going to go away in 2026. But if you have a stablecoin that's private and not backed by the dollar, this will allow things like medical tourism to happen. So now you can buy these medical services without, the risks for the provider are, they're going to get shut off from PayPal. There's going to be a chargeback with a credit card. The bank won't allow for an international wire. These are known pain points in the medical tourism field. So FreedomDollar addresses that. And that's just the healthcare area. So the good news is we actually have solutions for private money that have significant purchasing power behind it that could be used, that could scale. And then the next wave on that is, okay, let's say we have OSARA, which is stage one of an alternative system. And again, I'm not building it to be the only solution. I hope more people build medical tourism solutions and solutions that empower people. It's not even really a competitive thing. We're not charging for it. So it's not like it's I'm taking it we want to build a monopoly on this. I hope, if anything, by seeing OSR and some of these other things, people get the idea of, well, hey, I could create this. I could create a food marketplace. I could create an energy marketplace. I could create a marketplace for selling AI compute that's private. So, there are literally infinite possibilities here as to what you can build. And we need parallel markets for everything. And so there aren't many parallel markets. So the good news is, if you don't like your job and you're like, how am I going to make money and not get trapped? The idea is, well, what are you interested in that we need a parallel solution for, and then figure out how to learn about that and connect with others. That's something that I want Freedom Forge to become, is a gathering place for people that are entrepreneurial or that want to try to build new things to be able to connect and learn how to use the technology and share insight and share wisdom. So that's what we have here. So we found health insurance through them. So also people can join and share their local people's rights or American contingency. They're active groups in all states. So I'll take a look at this AMAC, and I will say, so there are a lot of solutions that offer different kind of health insurance, and a lot of them have different risk pools or whatever. But the actual problem is the healthcare services themselves. You can get into a different risk pool and you might be able to like change. Well, yeah, you've saved 20% of your premiums, but that doesn't actually. You have to look at the fine print in these things. There's one out there that I looked at, and it's new, but what I found is that there could be issues. It doesn't necessarily solve the catastrophic coverage case because they're small risk pools, and a lot of them are kind of self-selected risk pools for people that have low risk, which isn't a bad idea, but it also still doesn't necessarily address or fix the fact that the risk pool is engaging in buying healthcare services within the existing system that is overinflated. So if you want to strike at the root of the problem, it's not just how risk pools or insurance works. It's the fundamental delivery of healthcare itself and the quality and pricing of that healthcare, regardless of which mechanism is involved in the purchase of those services. And so this is why when we've got to get really outside of the box. And once you understand how the medical industry works, realize that, a lot of these procedures don't work. A lot of the medications actually don't work. A lot of the stuff isn't even helpful, and it's not designed to be because there are no incentives for it. So, all right, well, it looks like nobody's going to hop on tonight. So we're about 3 hours in. So unless anybody else has any urgent questions, I think I'm going to call it a night. And I'm going to play the new song on the way out. I played it at the beginning. It was the last song that I played in the intro, but I'll play it. This is tentatively going to be our own nothing anthem. I'm going to create anthems for the various sites, but that's going to be kind of a iterative process. But maybe I'll play some of the other songs and post some of the other songs and see people can vote on them, because there are 10 of them that I like. So I'm not entirely wedded to this one, but I do like it. But I think maybe there are some others. So let me see. There's one more comment. All right. So, all right. With no other questions, I'm going to play this last song, and we will be back Thursday at 6 p.m. I will be in Florida this time. So hopefully I'll get some sun and restore my health here a little bit. All right. Have a good night.
Whoa. Tom and Mary Johnson, Maple Street's in 99. He's at the kitchen table, 6 a.m., the screen's blue light. She's got the smart speaker listening, every whisper, every prayer. Their daughter's face lit up at midnight by the tablet's empty stare. They signed 1,000 agreements, never read a single line. They said you will own nothing, it was always the design. Tom checked his retirement, thought he had it saved away, but he's just holding IOUs, the banks get paid first when it breaks. He bought the coin that promised him would set his family free, but every transaction on the chain was there for all to see. Mary got the diagnosis, found her records had been sold. They want us to own nothing, not our health, our wealth, our soul. And one night at the kitchen table, hands around the coffee cups, Tom looked at Mary and Mary looked at Tom, and both said, that's enough. We'll own none but our freedom. Well, and where they cannot see, we'll own nothing but tomorrow. Wallet to wallet, finally free. They say we'll own nothing. Well, we'll own our destiny. We found another way. Now they're trading private coins, no ledger they can read. Money that can't be frozen, transactions they can't see. Daughter's learning in the kitchen, not a screen that steals her soul. Son knows how to build things on nothing they control. Found 1,000 other families, wallets lean but names unknown. When they said we'd own nothing, we built a world they'll never own. We'll own nothing but our freedom, building where they cannot see. We'll own nothing but tomorrow, wallet to wallet, finally free. They said we'll own nothing, well, we'll own our destiny. We found another way. You already took it all. What's left for you to choose? You can sit and wait for permission, or you can finally move on nothing, then build everything. We got nothing left to lose. We'll own nothing but our freedom. Building where they cannot see. We'll own nothing but tomorrow. While every wall is finally free, they said we'll own nothing. Well, we'll own our destiny. We found another way. Tom and Mary Johnson, they don't own a thing they say, but they got nothing left to lose now. Come and build another way. Live free or die, but death's not the worst. It's waking up empty, it's dying of thirst. Trading your days for insurance and pills, while the machine builds your cage and you're paying the bill. Quiet desperation, that's the real grave. A life half lived as a comfortable slave. This ain't what you were born for, you know it's true. You feel it in your chest, breaking through. They're wiring the walls, closing in, tracking your dollars underneath your skin. Left and right, same throne, same crown. No one stands up, no one makes a sound. They hand you a ballot like it means something real. Two wings of one bird, same deal, same steel. We say no, no to the change, no to the dollar running through our veins, no to the white coats, no to the lies. This is the day that we rise. It's hers right here, it's hers right now. Your rights are yours, you take them back, not giving out. Not from the left, not from the right. They were always yours, now step into the light. The daylight breaks, a new day comes. We take it back, every last one. Live free or die, we fan the flame. Nothing will ever be the same. Fan the flame.